Chapter 384. I wanted to repay you before, but now I want to protect you. Why was he so touched when a young girl said she wanted to protect him? Qin Etienne wasn't childish, and she wasn't just saying it. She was really using her wisdom and ability, and even her life to protect Fang Yan. In the Battle of Zhang Abyss, when Fang Yan was attacked by an expert from the armory, she used her body to help Fang Yan block the bullets. The plane had just landed, and the elites sent by Jiang Junling wanted to take Fang Yan away. She was already prepared. At tonight's charity gala, she and Fang Yan had a tacit understanding, and Jiang Junling lost completely. Fang Yan even knew that she didn't show up at the gala from beginning to end, because she didn't want to put too much pressure on him. She didn't want the Qin family to be hostile to him. If she stood up to support Fang Yan, completely broke off with the general, and brought the Qin family into an unknown and dangerous situation, how would the Qin family look at Fang Yan? She changed into casual clothes and waited at the entrance of the club like a girl next door. She accepted his invitation to walk all the streets and alleys to see the snow in the city, just because she hadn't seen him for a long time, and she wanted to see him. He thought it was a fleeting encounter, but it was the navigation of her life that she couldn't forget. Qin Etienne didn't wait for Fang Yan's objection and rejection. What did it have to do with her? She waved at Fang Yan and walked towards the side of the street next to the bushes. A black luxury car drove over, and someone jumped out to open the door. Qin Etienne bent over to get in the car, and then the luxury car drove away. Fang Yan stood in the snow, not feeling cold. Instead, he felt an ambiguous feeling spread all over his body, making him feel indescribably comfortable and warm. It turned out that no matter men or women, old or young, they all had zero resistance to sweet talk. It turned out that it felt so good to be a sugar daddy. I wish someone would jump out and call me a gigolo right now, Fang Yan thought to himself. When Fang Yan came back to his senses, he found that there were no people in this world of ice and snow, and there were no cars. He couldn't even stop a taxi. This put him in a difficult position. Just now, with Qin Etienne accompanying him, he didn't feel tired no matter how far he walked. But now, it was unacceptable for him to walk back alone to the Maple Leaf Club. Fang Yan suddenly felt that Qin Etienne was a liar. He had promised not to let the wind hurt his eyes, and not to let the snow fall on his shoulders. Now he was about to be frozen into an ice sculpture, but he had gone home to sleep in a luxury car. Is that what you promised me? I'd rather believe that there are ghosts in the world than believe a woman's stupid mouth. Who said that? Fang Yan thought that it made sense. Fang Yan felt empty in his heart. He felt insulted. Since it was a liar, he should take away what he wanted to cheat. You waved your sleeves without taking away a cloud. How could I, the victim, cry to others? When Fang Yan was worried, a black car silently leaned against him. The door opened, and a middle-aged man wearing glasses came out. He looked Fang Yan up and down and asked, Fang Yan. Uncle Lin, it's me. Fang Yan recognized the man with glasses and said respectfully, come with me. Now. All right, Fang Yan said. Fang Yan got into the car, and Uncle Lin followed him and sat in the back seat. The door was closed, and the car moved forward again. Fang Yan looked at Uncle Lin and said with a smile, Uncle Lin, long time no see. Uncle Lin's name was Lin Donghai. He came from Swallow Dock, and was of the same generation as Fang Yan's father, Fang Yixing. Because of his outstanding talent, he was taken by Yi Daoling, one of the 3 tigers of the Yi family, to engage in economic research. It could be said that he was Yi Daoling's first assistant and absolute confidant. Lin Donghai came to find Fang Yan at this time, because Yi Daoling was in a hurry to see him. This was also the reason why Fang Yan didn't hesitate to follow Lin Donghai into the car. Some things should probably be settled. But what Fang Yan didn't understand wasn't this progress a bit too fast? Was it because Swallow Dock's power didn't decrease? Or was it because others also wanted to use this opportunity to suppress those rich families' heads that were too high? There were some things that Fang Yan couldn't not think about seriously. The director wants to see you. Lin Donghai looked at Fang Yan and said expressionlessly. Perhaps it was because he dealt with numbers all day. Lin Donghai looked a bit strict and stiff. But Fang Yin knew from Yi Fengsheng that Lin Donghai had always been deeply trusted by Yi Daoling. The main person in charge of Yi Daoling's promotion of the urban agricultural household financial income ratio adjustment was mainly Lin Donghai. People with ability should be respected by others. Fang Yin maintained the necessary respect and kindness to Lin Donghai. Seeing people from Swallow Dock outside, after all, he was more friendly than others. This was an innate regional feeling. Yi Daoling had a research room in the Yanhuang think tank under the jurisdiction of the national minister. He was the director of that research room. So when Lin Donghai said that the director wanted to see Fang Yin, it meant that Yi Daoling wanted to see Fang Yin. Isn't it too late? Fang Yin said with a smile. The director just finished reading a document. There is still some time before going to bed. Lin Donghai explained patiently. Facing this young man, these bystanders might have a clearer understanding. That was a very important position. It would be a lie to say that they were not tempted. The director also wanted to fight for it. But soon there was a rumor that the position had been decided. A core figure of the general family would be the head of that department. This made the director completely give up. Since such news had already been released, it meant that the big shots above had already made a decision. If they continued to fight, it would be insensible. However, the world turned upside down overnight. The appointment letter suddenly came down, the rumor was shattered, and Yi Daoling became the head of that department. He became a core figure in the economic field. Yi Daoling was still a little confused. He didn't understand what happened. Why did this fat piece of meat suddenly fall into the plate in front of him? Layers of information feedback, and the truth was also revealed layer by layer. Everyone knew the truth. The reason why this appointment came so suddenly and so pleasantly was because a few kids had a fight in Yanjing. Yi Daoling wanted to see Fang Yin. He felt that he had to talk to Fang Yin. In order to show that he valued Fang Yin, he even sent his first assistant, Lin Donghai, instead of his secretary. One had to know that Lin Donghai could represent Yi Daoling on some levels. They were both from Swallow Dock, so there was an element of homesickness. West Court. This was where some of the important leaders of the national ministries lived. It was quiet here, and it was close to work. It only took a few minutes to walk from West Court to the State Council. The car stopped in front of a small building. The driver got off first and helped Fang Yin, and Lin Donghai opened the door. Lin Donghai made an inviting gesture, indicating that Fang Yin should enter first. Fang Yin pushed open the red door of the small courtyard and saw a middle-aged man in a white tang suit practicing boxing in the courtyard. He was practicing the Yi family's white tiger fist. It was forceful and fierce. He moved and jumped like a ferocious tiger hunting its prey. He was fierce and courageous and extremely powerful. The white tiger fist was divided into 3 levels: transformation, godly, and tiger. With Yi Daoling's current performance, he had actually entered the tiger stage. He turned into a tiger and used his body to raise the tiger. The tiger gave birth to wind, and the tiger's power could hurt people's internal organs. This set of boxing technique was only at the intermediate level. Fang Yin and Lin Donghai were both knowledgeable people. They stood by the side and didn't disturb him. With an extremely suppressed tiger roar, Yi Daoling punched out. The wind from the fist swept past, and the pine trees in the courtyard rustled. Countless snowflakes fell, and the scene was extremely beautiful. After Yi Daoling finished, the secretary beside him quickly brought a warm towel. Yi Daoling took the towel and wiped the sweat from his forehead. He threw the towel into the secretary's hands and strode in front of Fang Yin, sizing him up with sharp eyes. "Third uncle." Fang Yin respectfully greeted Yi Daoling. He and Yi Fengsheng called each other brothers, so he naturally had to call Yi Daoling the same way Yi Fengsheng called him. Fang Yin. Yi Daoling's face was long and narrow, and his eyebrows were thick. His facial features were tight and angular, making his appearance look extremely aggressive. The Yi family was proud and good-looking. Everyone used the word peacock to describe the Yi family. Of course, Yi Fengsheng was an exception. Yi Daoling had the typical face of the Yi family. He wore a white tang suit, and he gave off a carefree and unrestrained feeling. If one didn't know his identity, no one would think that he would be in a high position at such a young age. Many people think that I got lucky. Don't you think so too? Yi Dowling looked at Fang Yan and asked with a serious expression. Fang Yan's mind turned, and he quickly analyzed the meaning of Yi Dowling's words. First, he must have gotten some kind of benefit, or else no one would think that he got lucky. Second, because he got this benefit, he was pushed to the teeth of the storm, and he even encountered the hostility of some forces. Fang Yan said with a smile. Third uncle, in the eyes of those without abilities, everyone's success depends on luck. Because if it's about ability, it happens to be the part that they lack. Fang Yan's answer obviously didn't satisfy Yi Dowling. His face was still cold as he said, Not only them, even I think so. Although your flattery is natural and smooth, believe me, there are many people who are more skilled than you. If it's a matter of ability, don't tell me that the previous candidates don't have the ability. Don't the others have the ability? Fang Yan, don't underestimate the heroes of the world. Everyone who can climb to this position has their own excellence. The matter that had originally been settled. How could there suddenly be such a shocking reversal? This kind of thing can't tolerate a single mistake, and no one dares to be sloppy in the appointment of personnel. Fang Yan didn't know how to respond. What does this old man want to say? Don't tell me that you still want to beat me up after I helped you out? I won't agree, and Qin Etian won't agree either. I will call Qin Etian. So I really got lucky. Yi Dowling grinned and said. Chapter 385. Fang Yan had come into contact with many people from the Yi family. They were beautiful, arrogant, and serious. Apart from Yi Fengsheng, everyone else was upright and square. His impression of Yi Dowling was very vague because when he was young, Yi Dowling was already working outside. During festivals, Yi Dowling could only see him from afar when he drove back. The two of them had almost no interaction. He looked very mature and steady, but he didn't expect Yi Dowling to have such a teasing side. Just a moment ago, he had a serious expression on his face that made people feel pressured. Suddenly he grinned and looked very proud. This was really cute. Yi Dowling was known as the most bad-tempered person in the Yi family. However, such a bad-tempered person was able to mix well in front of the Prime Minister. Naturally, he couldn't be judged by common sense. Fang Yan remembered the words, "Don't underestimate the heroes of the world." You said I got lucky? So what if I'm just a lucky bastard? Some people want to pick up shit but don't have the luck, Yi Dowling said casually. Lin Donghai frowned slightly. He knew that the walls had ears. Some words should be kept in the heart and not spoken out. However, he knew Yi Dowling's character. He dared to smash the table and cup in front of the Prime Minister. His persuasion was useless. You dare to think and speak. Third uncle is a real person. Fang Yan smoothly flattered him. He really wasn't convinced. Did someone really want to flatter him? You're a slippery kid. Yi Dowling walked over and put his arm around Fang Yan's shoulder and said, Let's go in and have some tea. Let's have a good chat between uncle and nephew. I want to hear how you did it. The house was a classical structure with a lot of primary colored wood. The atmosphere in the tea room was very intimate. Fang Yan and Yi Dowling sat on the mahogany chairs with blankets. The secretary brought over the brewed tea. Yi Dowling waved his hand and said to the secretary, Take it out. I don't want to drink this kind of crude tea today. No matter if it's a man or a woman from our swallow dock, all of us are good at the tea ceremony. He pointed to the tea-making tools in front of him and said to Fang Yan, You've called me third uncle for so many years, but I've never drunk a bowl of tea you made. Come, I'll give you a chance today. Fang Yan smiled bitterly. He had no choice but to take the tea set and get busy. Fang Yan moved skillfully and quickly brought a cup of brewed black tea to Yi Dowling. Yi Dowling looked at the color of the soup and brought it to his nose to smell the fragrance. He said with emotion, It's really not easy to drink a cup of good tea outside. Yi Dowling was in a high position. What kind of good tea could he not drink? However, if one wanted to drink good tea like the one from Swallow Dock, it would not be an easy task. It had nothing to do with the tea leaves, but with the person who made the tea. Perhaps Yi Dowling's assistant's ability was outstanding, but things like the way of tea depended on one's cultivation and one's talent. Not a single one could be omitted. If third uncle wants to drink tea, he often goes back to Swallow Dock. Fang Yan said with a smile. Every household in Swallow Dock is good at brewing tea. Not only good tea, but also good wine. Zhang Matzi's Shadozi, sister-in-law Li's plum wine, and Li Xiaoyan's father's 3-day drunk. They are all excellent wines. Different types of wine have different tastes. Coupled with different moods, it can make people intoxicated. Especially in such weather. Isn't it better to lie in the snow and drink a mouthful of strong wine better than anything? Yi Daoling laughed and pointed at Fang Yan. You brat, do you want to bring me into a pit? I pulled you over in the middle of the night to listen to you brag about Swallow Dock's good wine? Aren't I more familiar with it than you? Let me tell you, we drank a lot when we were young. The tricks that you guys used to trick girls are all outdated tricks that we used in the past. That's right. Fang Yan nodded. Third uncle is a senior. Naturally, he is much better than us. Tell me. Yi Daoling held the teacup and said, this is not something that can be completed in a short period of time. You must have put in a lot of effort, right? Fang Yan knew that he couldn't avoid it. So he repeated what he experienced from the moment he got off the plane. Of course, he only picked the important parts and said what could be said. As for the reason for the conflict, 99% of the responsibility was on Jiang Junling. He was a loser who couldn't bear the oppression and humiliation, and had to resist. After listening to Fang Yan's narration, Yi Daoling pondered for a long time. He stared at Fang Yan and said, many people think that Jiang Junling lost because he underestimated his opponent. In fact, he lost because of his ability. You are talented, but they don't want to believe it. Third uncle, I just made a bet with him. Fang Yan said with a smile. I can afford to lose, but he can't. Not everyone has the courage to go on the card table, and it's such an unfair opponent, Yi Daoling said in a deep voice. To tell you the truth, I also wanted to gamble like you before. Maybe I had too many scruples, or maybe I didn't have enough courage. It was best to leave it unsettled and delay it until now. I didn't expect to be pushed by you young juniors this time. Third uncle was ready to go. If we didn't have enough power before, we wouldn't have been able to push it. Yi Daoling looked at Fang Yan with a smile and said, how does it feel to be famous in Yanjing City? Famous in Yanjing City? Why? Do you think it's just a child's game? Yi Daoling smiled warmly. If it's just your child's fight, the heat will disappear after 2 days of discussion. However, there was a position appointment later, and more people paid attention to it. It's not an exaggeration to say that you are famous in the capital now. To be honest, I really don't want to be famous. Fang Yan said. However, I'm not afraid even if I become famous. Anyway, I'll hide in Huaqing after the new year. People can say whatever they want, think whatever they want. You're quite cunning. Yi Daoling pointed at Fang Yan and said. However, this time is different from the past. You push me, which is equivalent to slashing the Jiang family. I'm afraid the Jiang family won't let it go easily, right? I'll deal with it when it comes. Fang Yan said. If I don't slash them, they won't make it easy for me. Since it's like this, then I'll make them feel uncomfortable. I like fairness. Yi Daoling's gaze seriously examined Fang Yan again. He wanted to see if this young man was bluffing or was truly brave. He was very satisfied with the result. The Fang family has a successor. Yi Daoling praised. This time, it's not just your contribution alone. You know this better than me. You guys jumped out and played such a trick. Didn't you just want to force the emperor to abdicate? The Jiang family retreated. It proves that I succeeded in forcing the emperor to abdicate, right? Fang Yan said with a smile. He really wasn't clear about the subsequent events. After he came out of the clubhouse, he met Qin Etian, who was waiting at the door. The two walked along the way. There was no phone call from the house. Of course, his phone was long gone. At that time, when his clothes exploded, he only cared about his crotch. How could he care about other things? He didn't know if Yi Fengsheng and the others helped him tidy up properly. Did they peek at his phone after tidying up? It's really worrying. Mr. used the red phone. There's a sentence that was very important. The descendants of the sages shed blood and tears. Who would be willing to die for the country? Yi Daoling said emotionally. No matter what Mr. thinks in his heart, at least he stood up at the crucial moment, and this statement is very powerful. Mr. is the soul of Swallow Dock. Fang Yan said. With him here, he won't let us children be bullied. Yes. Swallow Dock has its mission. Mr. has Mr.'s mission. Since I got a great bargain this time, I naturally have to take up my own mission, Yi Dowling said. Zhu Zaidan's cultivation was obstructed. I plan to let him go to North Sea to train for 3 years. The sky is high and the sea is wide. Maybe there's another opportunity there. Li Xiaotian isn't young anymore. It's time for him to come out and do something. There's also Ruan Qian. I've seen that child's information. He's smart and careful, but his temper is too soft. I've specially chosen a good place for him. Swallow Dock's younger generation depends on you guys. Fang Yin nodded and said, You're the elder. It's up to you how to arrange it. I think their families won't object. What about you? Yi Dowling asked. You still have to go back to Huaqing to be a teacher? I still have a lot of things to think about. Fang Yin said. Maybe Huaqing is more suitable for me. Then go. Yi Dowling said. There's something you might or might not know. What is it? Fang Yin curiously asked. Your grandpa once came to our Yi family to propose marriage. He said he wanted to betroth our Tung Wen to you, but I kicked him out. Yi Dowling said with an emotional expression. Tung Wen is the child of our Yi family, who has the highest chance of achieving extraordinary success in martial arts. She's the darling of our Yi family. How can we let your Fang family take advantage of her? We naturally won't agree. Then you agree now? Fang Yin asked. No, Yi Dowling said straightforwardly. Since you won't agree, why are you telling me this? Yi Dowling smiled maliciously and said, I'm afraid that you'll become arrogant and think that you can trick our little princess away just by helping me. That won't do, that's a different matter. I can't give Yi Tung to you. You can't have dreams. What if it comes true? Fang Yin waved his hand and said, Third uncle, what kind of person do you think I am? How can I have any ideas about Yi Tungwen? You also know that I've been beaten by her many times before. How can I marry her and get beaten every day? That's all Grandpa's random matchmaking. Yi Tungwen and I are impossible. Gah! The door was pushed open. A white-clothed girl stood at the entrance of the tea room. Chapter 386. White clothes, short hair, cold and aloof. Like a plum blossom in the snow, like an unsheathed sword. Her facial features looked extremely familiar. It was the Yi Ro that Fang Yin mentioned just now. Fang Yin didn't expect to see Yi Ro at this time and place. He couldn't help but grin. As he smiled, the smile on his face froze into a thick layer of frost. He thought of what he said just now. Although most of what he said was the truth, Yi Ro did beat him a lot in the past. Who likes to hear the truth these days? Does Fatso like to hear others say he's fat? Does a poor person like to hear others say he's poor? Does a writer like to hear others say he's pretentious? He doesn't like any of them. Fang Yin blinked his eyes and looked at Yi Ro standing at the door with a face full of amazement. He pretended to be confused and asked, Third uncle, is this your daughter? When I was young, I heard people say that only the Yi family in Swallow Dock looks the most beautiful. Even now, people still use the word peacock to describe the Yi family. One is that you are arrogant, and the other is that you are beautiful. Although this lady isn't as beautiful as her sister, Yi Ro, and her temperament may be slightly inferior, it's best to use a poem to describe her. Her charming eyes shyly close, and her red lips open in a smile. The wind sweeps the grape belt, the sunlight pomegranate skirt. Hibiscus out of clear water, nature goes to carve. Looking back and smiling, all the beauties of Swallow Dock lose their color. Fang Yin looked at Yi Dowling with a face full of sincerity and said, Third uncle, Yi Ro is a rare genius of the Yi family in 100 years. She's also the leader of the younger generation of our Swallow Dock. It's not an exaggeration to describe her as the family's treasure, or the country's treasure. I naturally don't deserve such a girl. I don't even deserve to carry her shoes. I know this very well. But this girl, I fell in love at first sight. My heart is also beating like crazy. Third uncle, if you don't believe me, you can touch me. You can see it even without touching. Don't you think my face is a bit flushed right now? Third uncle, please help me fulfill my wish, and give me this girl's name and phone number. Fang Yin. Yi Ro interrupted Fang Yin. Fang Yin widened his eyes at Yi Ro and said, Girl, you know me? Yi Rou stood at the door and expressionlessly looked at Fang Yan and said, "Didn't you always want to know the power of the Tao querying realm? I only told your sister Yi Rou. I happen to have a little time now. Of and of. Of Yi. I have of time. Of the road, of king of Yen of Yi of the, of. Clang, clang, clang. The teapot and teacups on the table were swept up by the wind and smashed towards the wall in the distance. Lu Dowling's heart was bleeding. This was the eye of the rain that he got from Jingda Kiln. He was only willing to let people use it to entertain important guests. What was wrong with him today? Why did he take it out to entertain Fang Yan? It wasn't like he didn't know that this pair of enemies would fight whenever they met. Kacha kacha. The porcelain hit the wall and shattered, and the thin porcelain bowl turned into pieces. The wind was strong, and Fang Yan's hair and clothes were blown away. The wind and waves were like knives. The air in front was emptied, and the energy coming from behind was Yi Gentle's real killer move. Fang Yan didn't take it head-on. He slapped the mahogany seat beneath him with both hands and flew through the window towards the courtyard. Yi Rou struck out with her palm again. Instead of falling, she rose up and rushed out of the courtyard. Bang, bang, bang. Ah! The battle outside was in full swing, and from time to time, Fang Yan's miserable cries could be heard. Yi Dowling held the teacup in his hand and leisurely drank the hot tea in the cup. After drinking the dark red tea, his gaze fell back to the broken tiles on the ground. He couldn't help but take a deep breath and felt his teeth hurt. A good horse with a good saddle, a good teapot with a good cup. Yi Dowling sighed softly. The teapot is broken, and this is the only surviving teacup. It's an awkward situation. What a pity. 10 minutes later, the sound of fighting outside stopped. Yi Dowling got up and walked into the courtyard. Yi Rou was nowhere to be seen, and only Fang Yan was lying miserably in the snow. Yi Dowling squatted in front of Fang Yan and asked with a smile, "I heard that your heart of Tai Chi broke through again. What level are you at now? The heart of Tai Chi is a new thing. No one has gone through it, and you have to figure it out yourself. Logically speaking, you shouldn't have been beaten so badly by Rou, right? If the one lying here was Yi Rou, what would you do?" Fang Yan asked. "This question is really awkward. I would probably get the guards to drag you out and shoot you," Yi Dowling said lightly. This place was heavily guarded, and every small building was guarded by guards. Yi Dowling's words were honest. "Then how do you still have the nerve to ask me why I lost so badly?" Fang Yan roared. "This is your Yi family's territory. Can I beat her up? It's not a big deal for a man to be beaten up by a woman," Yi Dowling said. "Besides, not everyone is qualified to be beaten up by Rou. I watched her grow up, and I've never seen her beat anyone up like this. You are indeed luckier than others." Fang Yan looked at Yi Dowling with a bitter mouth and said, "Third uncle, why are you doing this?" "What do you mean?" Yi Dowling looked innocent. "We were chatting and casually asked a few questions about your feelings. Is there some unspeakable secret? You tricked me," Fang Yan said. Yi Dowling chuckled and said, "I learned from you. Your Yin family's kids' methods are much darker than mine. I represent justice. Okay, I'm better at this kind of official article than you." Yi Dowling interrupted Fang Yan's words and said, "Justice represents living. Evil is only because you are already dead." Fang Yan felt that these people really understood the essence of this world better than him. Yi Dowling patted Fang Yan's shoulder and said, "It's late, go back to sleep." "I think I'm injured. Can I rest here for the night?" Fang Yan asked. "No, you don't have to specially prepare a room for me. Just let me and Yi Rou stay in the same room," Fang Yan said. "Don't treat me as a guest. Yi Rou can give me the bed. She can sleep on the floor. Dong Hai, see the guest out." "Third uncle." Yi Dowling was too lazy to pay attention to this guy and returned to the living room. Lin Donghai stood next to Fang Yan and looked at Fang Yan, who was lying in the snow and refused to get up. He said, "Fang Yan, I'll send you back." "I'm asleep." Fang Yan closed his eyes and said. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a loud snore. Lin Donghai looked into the room. Yi Dowling was so angry that he almost dropped the only teacup in his hand. He pointed at Fang Yin in the snow and said, "This guy. He is the best spouse you chose for yourself? Does he look like a young hero at all? Does he look like a Tai Chi grandmaster? He is simply a scoundrel," Yi Rou said lightly. She had a clearer understanding of Fang Yin than anyone else. Or rather, she had a clearer understanding of him than everyone else. Some people said that he watched Fang Yin grow up. Only Yi Rou was qualified to say that she beat him up. Yi Daoling looked at Yi Rou in surprise and said, "When that old fox Fang Yin went to the Yi family to challenge them, I knew he was up to no good. But his words were too harsh. You guys were tricked into accepting the challenge, and I didn't say much. A challenge is a challenge. Who has the Yi family been afraid of? But what I don't understand is that one challenge is enough. Winning once is equivalent to winning for a lifetime. Why do you keep being tricked year after year and constantly accept their challenges? After that, I heard that you left watching for this kid. I also know the details of you challenging the Thousand Leaves military department for him. You convinced the elder ancestor to allow him to go in and kowtow. In these few years, has the elder ancestor seen any other child? Only a few elders of the older generation would meet and chat for a long time during the New Year and other festivals. Later, you accepted his invitation and were brought around by that kid all over Swallow Dock. The family had no choice but to take a stance on your matter. I went back a few days ago to visit the old ancestor and also to discuss your matter with your father and second uncle. The old ancestor said that she wouldn't get involved in your matter. Even if she didn't get involved, your father and second uncle, and I still had to get involved. My attitude is still the same as before. I don't agree with the two of you being together. Ro, your personality is light and your thinking is simple. You are wholeheartedly pursuing the martial Tao. And we also hope that you can shine on this Tao. If you can enter the Tao-seeking realm, or go a step further, and enter the legendary heavenly Tao realm, it will naturally be of great help to our Yi family. We all have selfish motives for this. Another reason to object is that we feel that Fang Yin isn't suitable for you. Although I call him a scoundrel, this kid is enlightened at a young age. His heart of Taiji has broken through twice and his strength isn't below yours. This time, he plotted in secret and forced the abdication of the Maple Leaf Society. Not only sir, how many people in our Swallow Dock have been played by him? He's the type of person who can control clouds and rain with a flip of his hand, but it's because he's too smart, too full of ideas and too ambitious that we feel that you can't be with him. Chapter 387. Yi Daoling had a smile on his face and looked like he was trying his best to persuade him. He said, "You are stubborn and unwilling to admit defeat. So you need a more gentle man. He can take care of you, assist you and protect you with peace of mind. What you need is not a storm, but a gentle breeze and drizzle. Not a stormy sea, just a sunny day." Everything in the world pays attention to the complementarity of yin and yang. Emotions are the same. Your temperament is too rigid, so you can't find another more rigid one. Chopping cotton with a kitchen knife. The knife doesn't fall, but the cotton still falls. A rock colliding with a rock. That would result in both sides suffering heavy losses and being smashed to pieces. I think Bai Xiu is not bad, right? Of course, I'm not saying you have to choose Bai Xiu. We have many talents in Swallow Dock, and young heroes are everywhere in Four Corner City. Take your time, and you will find a suitable one, right? There is another reason to object. Yi Rou looked at the knight outside the door and said softly. "What?" Yi Daoling asked. "You are afraid," Yi Rou said. Yi Daoling smiled and said, "What are we afraid of? What do we have to be afraid of? Fang Yin is not bad. His performance this time is amazing, but it's not enough for us to be afraid of him. If you are old, and no one in the younger generation of Yi family can surpass Fang Yin, are you not afraid? No one in the younger generation of Yi family can surpass Fang Yin, and I'm married to Fang Yin. Are you not afraid? At that time, will Yi family or Fang family be the leader? At that time, can Yi family still maintain the power of the number one family in Swallow Dock? This is the most important reason to object," Yi Rou said. Yi Daoling sighed softly and said, "This kind of thing needs to be honest. We all know you are smart, and you did do this in the past. But in the end I can't say it. Your father, your second uncle, and I are over 100 years old, and we still have to worry about the development of a child. It's really embarrassing and shameful. But what you said is indeed what we are most worried about. Yi Dowling was slightly annoyed that his thoughts were exposed by Yi Wenro, but he didn't hide it anymore. If Fang Yan was just an outstanding youth from Swallow Dock, we wouldn't have to worry about this. As the seniors of Swallow Dock and Fang Yan's elders, we are happy to see more outstanding youngsters rise to prominence. We still have this breadth of mind. Otherwise, your father wouldn't have stood up at Swallow Dock to help Fang Yan force her to abdicate. However, we saw the difference in your attitude towards Fang Yan and your feelings towards Fang Yan. If Fang Yan becomes a member of the Yi family, or rather, you become a member of the Fang family, the Yi family and the Fang family will be even closer, even becoming relatives who will advance and retreat together. We have no choice but to consider these questions. Although Yi Fengsheng is talented, that is only in terms of martial arts. Yi Fengsheng and the others are smart, but they have never been outstanding in terms of martial arts. Yi Zixin and Yi Ziming are also good young people, but they are still lacking compared to Yi Fengsheng and Yi Fengxing. Yi Xiaoye and Yi Xiaonian are both children, and they look obedient and sensible. They might have a bright future. However, they are still too young. You are the most perceptive in our Yi family, and you are also well-versed in worldly affairs. You are a top talent in both strategy and martial arts. Only you can compete with a monster like Fang Yan. However, you treat him differently. Just as you know, Yi Fengxing sees him as a big brother, and only follows his lead. If you marry into the Fang family, the two of you will help each other and cooperate with each other. At that time, will the Yi family still be able to maintain its position as the #1 family in Swallow Dock? The relationship between the Yi family and the Fang family. Will the Yi family lead the Fang family, or will the Yi family become the Fang family's vassal? Can't the elder ancestor see the hidden danger? However, the elder ancestor said that she won't get involved in this matter. She won't say anything, and she won't say anything. She can choose not to participate, but the elder ancestor is a woman after all. She can't bear to see her favorite child being wronged. However, us men of the Yi family, can we not get involved? Can we not stand up and oppose? Wen, protecting the Yi family is our responsibility. It's not convenient for your father to say it, and your second uncle doesn't want to say it, so let me be the bad guy. Yi Wenwan sighed softly and said, You are worried that you can't protect it, worried that the owner of the Swallow Dock will change, so you came to restrict my freedom. Is this your way of protecting? Yi Dowling smiled and said, I know you look down on this cheating method, and I also know you think third uncle is despicable and shameless. Wenwan, this world is really not as simple as you think. You think it's black or white, right or wrong, friend or foe. No, it's far more complicated than you think. Although I am not as good as you on the path of martial arts, I am very clear that it is countless times more complicated and difficult than climbing the path of martial arts. Can you understand? I understand. Yi Wenwan said. You are the pride of our Yi family. Yi Dowling said with relief. You are also my pride. Yi Wenwan glanced at Fang Yan who was lying in the snow and said, Give him a blanket. Then, she turned and walked to her room on the second floor. Yi Dowling's face was full of bitterness and said, You still don't understand. Of course, Fang Yan wouldn't sleep in a snow nest. While no one was paying attention, he quickly climbed up the pillar to the second floor, then turned over and jumped into Yi Wenwan's room. Yi Wenwan laid on the bed, as if she was already asleep, not moving at all. Fang Yan closed the window, glanced at the layout of the room, then spread out the blanket in his arms to the corner of the room, then consciously fell asleep on the ground. Yi Wenwan, Fang Yan called out. I'm asleep. Yi Wenwan said. A smile appeared on Fang Yan's lips as he said, Good night. Yi Wenwan didn't reply, and Fang Yan didn't speak either. One was sleeping on the bed, and the other was lying on the ground. The two were so close that they could hear each other's breathing. However, the room was silent. At first, it was difficult for Fang Yan to fall asleep. It was the first time he lived in the same room with Yi Wenwan, so he was naturally excited. But when he heard Yi Wenwan's breathing becoming more and more stable, He knew that Yi Wen-wan was really asleep. She wasn't worried at all that he would do anything to her. This made Fang Yin feel like he was a failure. As a man, being ignored by a woman like this, wasn't this too shameful? Fang Yin quickly abandoned this thought, thinking that as a man, being trusted by a woman so much, in fact, wasn't it a glorious thing? How could a man not be a little aggressive and dangerous? Did she treat you as a pet or a best friend? Fang Yin was irritated and accidentally fell asleep. When he woke up, the sky was already bright. The beauty on the bed was nowhere to be found, leaving behind a fragrant room. Fang Yin ran to the bathroom to wash up. There was a toothbrush and a white cup on the sink. The dark blue toothbrush and the white cup looked very beautiful. There were spare toothbrushes in the cabinet, which seemed to be specially prepared for Fang Yin. Fang Yin hesitated for a long time, but he didn't choose the new toothbrush that hadn't been opened. Instead, he held the white toothbrush in his hand. I can't waste it, Fang Yin thought. So he secretly smeared toothpaste on the white toothbrush and happily brushed his teeth. As expected, the toothbrush used by others was really easy to use. Not only was the hair soft, but there was also a residual fragrance on it. After brushing his teeth, he felt refreshed and his happiness index doubled. Holding the white toothbrush, Fang Yin looked at it from left to right and put it in front of his nose to smell it from time to time, feeling that he was really cute. After washing his face with Yi Wen-wan's towel, Fang Yin reluctantly walked out of the bathroom. He went downstairs to the living room and saw Lin Donghai sitting on the sofa reading the newspaper. Seeing Fang Yin go downstairs, Lin Donghai closed the newspaper in his hand and said, "There's breakfast on the table." "Thank you." Fang Yin ran to the table and sat down. As expected, there was delicious breakfast on the table. There was porridge that had been boiled to a pulp, and a large plate of steaming white steamed buns. There was a small plate of green vegetables, and a small plate of pickled vegetables. It was appetizing at first glance. While eating the porridge, Fang Yin asked, "Where's third uncle?" "The director went to work." "Where's Yi Wen-wan?" "Missy went out early in the morning." "Where did she go?" "I don't know." Fang Yin didn't get any reliable information from Lin Donghai, so he buried his head in the food. After eating, he called Yi Fengsheng and asked where they were now. After knowing that they didn't go back that night, and directly stayed in the hotel below Maple Leaf Club, Fang Yin asked Lin Donghai for a car and rushed to Maple Leaf Club. While sitting in the car, Fang Yin sent a message to Yi Ro and asked, "Where are you?" In the past, Fang Yin didn't have Yi Ro's phone number at all. Of course, even if he had, he didn't dare to call. After coming back this time, the relationship between the two improved greatly. A few days ago, they often took a walk around Swallow Dock, so Fang Yin took the opportunity to get Yi Ro's phone number. Of course, Yi Ro just didn't use her phone often. "On the way," Yi Ro replied. "On the way where?" "Swallow Dock." "I'll go back later," Fang Yin said. Yi Ro didn't respond. "If I knew you were going back, I would go back with you. It's good to have company," Fang Yin said. "I drove here," Fang Yin added. Yi Ro still didn't respond. Yi Ro was a goddess. It was normal for a goddess to ignore a loser's message. However, Fang Yin still felt hurt. So Fang Yin used his trump card and said to Yi Ro, "I used your toothbrush." Chapter 388. Fang Yin waited for a long time, but he still didn't receive any response from Yi Ro. This was the phone Fang Yin asked Lin Donghai for, so that he could contact Yi Fengsheng and the others. Even the SIM card was prepared by Lin Donghai. Fang Yin called the customer service number of the mobile company and found that there were still hundreds of yuan in the card. There shouldn't be a problem of not receiving information because of arrears. That was Yi Ro was not willing to respond. Fang Yin felt very strange. According to Yi Ro's character, she shouldn't keep silent when encountering such a thing. If she didn't explode in silence, she would perish in silence. Yi Ro couldn't perish, so there was only one truth. Fang Yin suddenly began to miss watching. Fang Yin met Yi Fengsheng and the others in the hall on the first floor of the Maple Leaf Club. Chen Yanqing was a civil servant, so she got up early and went to work. Wang Kaixian was also called back by his family. After what happened last night, his family was naturally worried. There were some things that needed to be clarified. They had offended such a powerful family, so they had to think about how to solve the problem. Li Xiaotian was taken away by his brother, Li Xiaolong. Only Yi Fengsheng, Zhu Zidin, and Ruan Jing accompanied Fang Yin back to Swallow Dock. They first asked the club to send a car to Nanshan Restaurant, where they had dinner last night. Their cars were all parked there, so they had to drive back. Fang Yan's pants exploded, and his phone and wallet were put away by Yi Fengsheng. Yi Fengsheng asked Fang Yan where he went last night. They didn't have his phone number, so they couldn't find him. They were worried that he would come back for them, so they stayed in the hotel under the Maple Leaf Club. They even helped Fang Yin get a room, but they didn't expect that Fang Yin would return after waiting for a whole night. Fang Yin didn't hide it. He said with a smile, "Your third uncle sent someone to take him away." "My third uncle?" "Yes, Yi Daoling." "Yi Daoling." Fang Yin nodded. "Why did he call you?" Yi Fengsheng asked with a puzzled expression. Then, he instantly understood and smiled. "I've received a call from my family. I really have to thank you for this. Third uncle probably didn't expect that this big pie would fall on his head, right?" "What are you thanking me for?" Fang Yin asked with a smile. "This is the result of everyone's hard work. This is Swallow Dock's victory." Zhu Zidin was also very happy and said, "Exactly. Third uncle also came from Swallow's Dock. In the future, if Swallow's Dock has any problems, won't he stand up and speak up for us? We won't be bullied by others," Ruan Qian said with a chuckle. Fang Yin looked at Zhu Zidin and said, "Third uncle also has arrangements for you. I'm afraid Zidan will go to the North Sea after the new year. I hope you can find some inspiration there." Xiao Tian also had to go out to work, so he would probably be assigned to work for third uncle. Ruan Qian also wants to come out, but as for where he placed it, third uncle didn't say, so I can't ask. It sounds really mysterious. What about me? What about me? Yi Fengsheng looked expectantly at Fang Yin and asked, "Did third uncle say where I'm going?" "No." Fang Yin shook his head. "You all have arrangements, why don't I?" Yi Fengsheng said angrily. The young people of Swallow's Dock had all gone out to do their own things. Only he stayed in the village with a group of old people and children. How could he stand it? Which young person didn't want to go out and explore? Which young person didn't want to see the outside world? Fang Yin knew that Yi Fengsheng especially envied those soldiers who could go to the battlefield. He really wanted to fight on the battlefield. However, the Yi clan obviously had no intention of letting him go. Fang Yin patted his shoulder and said, "Don't worry. The next time we meet, we'll go talk to third uncle. You should go out and see. Staying in Swallow's Dock all the time is not good for martial arts." "Exactly. You have to help me talk to him." Yi Fengsheng seemed to have grabbed onto a life-saving straw. "Before, your Tai Chi heart was almost dead. It was only after you went to Flower City that it was revived and had a second breakthrough. You can use yourself as an example. Third uncle will definitely agree." "I'll try," Fang Yin said. "I heard that my sister also came to Yanjing. You didn't see her?" Yi Fengsheng looked at Fang Yin and asked. "I saw her," Fang Yin said. "Hee. I knew you would definitely see her," Yi Fengsheng said with a smile. Then, he suddenly looked at Fang Yin with a shocked expression and said, "My mom called me today and said that cousin didn't go back last night. You didn't come to find us either. You two didn't go to a hotel to get a room, did you? How is that possible?" Fang Yin said impatiently, "Third uncle's house has a room. Do we still need to go to a hotel? You and my sister both slept at third uncle's house?" "Yes. You too." "Don't misunderstand," Fang Yin hurriedly explained. "Although I slept in the same room as your sister, she slept on the bed, and I slept on the floor. We didn't do anything." Yi Fengsheng's face was purplish red. He looked very uncomfortable. It was unknown if he was angry at the news that Fang Yin slept with his sister, Yi Ro, or excited to hear this secret. Either way, his expression didn't look right. Even Zhu Zidin and Ruan Qian were shocked when they heard the news. They stared at Fang Yin with wide eyes and faces full of disbelief. "You really slept with Yi Ro?" "He said he didn't do anything," Ruan Qian said. "We slept in the same room and didn't do anything. Do you think we'll believe you? You're not a decent person." "I can't do anything if you don't believe me," Fang Yin said helplessly. "Fengsheng, Use your phone to call your sister. Yi Fengxing obediently took out his phone and casually asked while searching for the number. Why? She's at Swallow Dock, so I won't be going back for now. Why? I used your sister's toothbrush to brush my teeth this morning. I told her, but she didn't react at all. I feel like something's wrong, Fang Yin said. Zhu Zaidan sneered and said, if I were you, I wouldn't go back either. I'll never return to Swallow Dock. Wan Qian looked at Fang Yin with a face full of sympathy and said, I'll immediately get someone to buy you a plane ticket back to Huaqing. You should hurry up and leave. Even if you used her toothbrush, there's no need to tell her. Aren't you digging your own grave? Yi Fengxing finally woke up from his state of shock and looked at Fang Yin and said, my sister is a neat freak. When I was young, I carried her cat, and she washed the cat several times. I used her toothbrush, not the other way around, Fang Yin explained. I'm not a neat freak. When Fang Yin drove home, his mother Lu Wan quickly came up to him. She looked at Fang Yin worriedly and said, your grandpa wants to see you. He's asked a few times. He wants you to see him immediately when you come back. Fang Yin, are you all right? Don't worry, Fang Yin smiled and said, I'll be fine. Where's my dad? He went to Yanjing to attend a pen meeting, Lu Wan said. Recently, he's been preparing for an art exhibition with a group of art friends, so he's been very busy these few days. As long as he likes it, let him be. Fang Yin smiled and said. Lu Wan nodded and said, I've never stopped him. He can do whatever he likes. Fang Yin put his arm around his mother's shoulder and pushed her into the house, saying, I'm going to talk to Grandpa. Go, Lu Wan said. Don't make your grandpa angry. If you do something wrong, you have to admit it immediately. Mom, I know, Fang Yin said with a smile and said. Fang Yin walked into the backyard and heard the sound of chess being played in his grandpa's room. Fang Yin pushed the door and entered the room. Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan were playing chess with their grandpa. Fang Yingying wanted to move the horse, but Fang Haohan stopped him and said that the horse would be bombarded after 3 steps. Fang Yingying didn't believe it. The two couldn't come to an agreement, and they almost fought. Fang Yan's grandpa, Fang Hui, was lying on the chair and watching with a smile. He didn't urge them, and waited for the two to come to a conclusion. Seeing Fang Yan come in, Fang Yingying immediately complained and said, Junior Marshal Uncle, come and see. Should we move the horse? Fang Yan glanced at the chess game and slapped Fang Yingying's head, saying, Move the horse and you will die. Fang Haohan said with a proud face, I told you, move the horse and you will die after 3 steps. Fang Yin slapped Fang Haohan's head again and said, 3 steps? 2 steps and you will die. You are also a fool. Fang Yin drove Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan out of the room and took their place to play chess with his grandpa. He said, Those 2 stinky chess pieces are no match for you. You have wronged them. Those 2 children are filial. They are worried that an old man like me would be bored lying in the room, so they came to accompany me to pass the time. Watching them fight and make fun of each other makes me feel happy. Fang Yin nodded and said, As long as you are happy. Fang Hui looked at Fang Yin and said, Have you vented your anger? I have vented my anger. Isn't this like making wedding clothes for others? You can't say that. Although it seems that the Yi family benefited the most from this incident, the entire Swallow Dock will also benefit from it. The Yi family got such a big advantage, shouldn't they show something? Fang Yin explained with a smile. That's true. Yi Dowling is capable and ambitious, but he is a bit narrow-minded. He thinks too highly of the Yi family's territory. In terms of looking at the big picture, he is not as far-sighted as you. Fang Hui was not stingy with his praise for his grandson. It doesn't matter, let them have it easy. Just take it as the first betrothal gift from the Fang family to the Yi family. Chapter 389. The heavy snow stopped. The warm sunlight painted the white snow in the courtyard with a layer of gold. The smooth white snow sparkled in Fang Yan's eyes. He woke up without illness or pain. It was another beautiful day. The villagers of Swallow Fort all had the habit of planting plum trees. As a group of experts who lived in seclusion, it was as if they would lose face if they didn't plant a few plum trees, or drink a few jeans of strong wine. Of course, There were also plum trees planted in the Fong family's courtyard. Fong Yin opened the window. A cool breeze blew in his face, followed by the fragrance of plum blossoms. Suddenly, a sweet fragrance wafted in the night, scattering the fragrance of heaven and earth, cleaning up the essence, leaving only the bones for people to see. Fong Yin sang with emotion. He felt like he was the plum blossoms that scattered the fragrance of heaven and earth. The red and yellow flowers trembled in the wind and snow, but silently sent a delicate fragrance to the house. This kind of character, this kind of strength of character, how was it different from what he did? For some reason, Fong Yin felt that the plum trees were very pitiful. He said to Fong Yingxiong, who had secretly pushed open the door and stuck his head out to look, "Yingxiong, go and tie some straw to the plum trees to keep them warm." Fong Yingying grinned and said, "Junior Marshal Uncle, are you starting to feel sad again? That sad wind in autumn. What sad wind in autumn? What sad wind and cold?" Fong Yin said unhappily, "I told you and Hero to read more books, but you two just don't listen." Yes, that's what I mean." Fong Yingying nodded shamelessly and said, "Junior Marshal Uncle, but this time you really think too much. Because plum trees are cold-resistant crops, they are not afraid of the cold." "How do you know they are not afraid of the cold?" Fong Yin turned and stared at Fong Yingying and asked, "Are you that plum tree? Do you know how they feel?" Fong Yingying opened his mouth and wanted to retort, "How do you know it is afraid of the cold? Are you a plum tree?" However, he knew that the consequences would be very serious. In the end, he swallowed back the words he wanted to say and said, "I'll go and dress them. Dress them up in an ambiguous way. Junior Marshal Uncle, my mother wants you to have breakfast in the living room." Fong Yingying turned around and ran out. Fong Yin admired the plum blossoms for a while before returning to the bathroom to wash up. She took the toothbrush from the cup and was about to brush her teeth when she suddenly remembered something. He ran into the room and took out a white transparent toothbrush box. Inside the box was a dark blue toothbrush. This was something he borrowed from Yi Dowling's house. Anyway, no one would use what he had used. With the mentality that wasting was shameful, he packed this toothbrush and brought it home. He squeezed some toothpaste onto his toothbrush and brushed his teeth again. After brushing his teeth, there was not only the taste of mint in his mouth, but also a faint fragrance. This kind of toothbrush is really a treasure. Fong Yin kissed the handle of the toothbrush and then put it into the cup. Instead, he threw the toothbrush he used before into the trash can. Who told it not to have a natural body fragrance? When Fong Yin was washing his face, the phone in the room rang. Fong Yin wiped his hands and walked outside. He turned on the phone and found that it was a message from Yi Ro. He opened the message with excitement. There were only 4 words and a question mark. "Did you brush your teeth?" "Yes." Fong Yin replied happily. He thought that this woman was really smart. She even guessed that he had just brushed his teeth. "Did you use that dark blue toothbrush?" Yi Ro's message came quickly. Her typing speed was not slow at all. Fong Yan's handsome face was slightly red. Thinking that Yi Ro was not in front of him, he returned to normal and replied with a little embarrassment. "Why do you ask?" Worry. Worry about what?" "That toothbrush fell into the toilet," Fong Yin said. Fong Yin sneered and replied, "Do you think I am an idiot? Do you think I will believe such a stupid lie? Even if you want to disgust me, you have to find a convincing reason. Do you smell fresh after brushing your teeth?" "That's right." Fong Yin grinned. "I knew it. How could a violent woman like you not have any reaction when encountering such a thing? It turns out that you just realized it. But isn't it too late to react now? You know, that toothbrush is already in my hands. I can't return it. Come and hit me if you can." "That's the smell of the orange brand toilet disinfectant," Yi Ro replied. Fong Yan's face turned pale. "Impossible." Fong Yan's hand trembled as he typed these 3 words. He didn't believe it. He was still struggling to survive. Otherwise, why would the smell be so strong? Yi Ro asked. Fong Yan's face was full of fear. A strong feeling of discomfort appeared in his stomach. He started to believe Yi Ro's words. Yes, Yi Ro usually didn't stay at Yi Dowling's house. That toothbrush might have just been unsealed. A toothbrush that had been used once. Even if it was stained with Yi Ro's fragrance, It shouldn't have such a strong orange smell. Moreover, the residue of the first use was normal. Wasn't it abnormal for the second use to have such a strong smell? Who would have such a strong smell on their body? Yi Ro sent another message. She was very patient. She had to convince Fang Yen until he believed her. Fang Yen didn't reply to this message. He didn't even dare to open it. Do you think I am the fragrant concubine? Yi Ro's words came through the phone. It was like a dagger stabbing into Fang Yan's heart. Fang Yan couldn't hold it in anymore. He laid on the edge of the toilet and vomited. In the woods by the shore of Shihizi, two beautiful girls were taking a walk in the snow. The cold wind in the morning was bone-chilling. Taking a breath would freeze people's hearts and lungs. However, these two girls didn't care at all. This kind of temperature was indeed not a difficult problem for them to overcome. Their physiques were originally better than ordinary people. Even some sturdy men were far inferior. Sister, guess what he is doing now? The girl with a red down jacket, blue jeans, and small leather boots asked playfully. The girl had a round face, round eyes, snow-white skin, and a cute appearance. She looked very young, and was in the best period of her first awakening of love. Girls at this stage were still full of fantasies about love. Whether it was someone else's or their own, they felt that it should be as beautiful and unforgettable as a fairy tale. Vomit. The girl with white leather and white pants said. The simplest sportswear couldn't hide her ethereal temperament. It was like a fairy in the snow. It was the master of the world of wind and snow. The girl in red giggled and said, Sister, you are so bad. You took revenge on him like this. I'm afraid he won't have the appetite to eat breakfast today. Not only this morning, but also this afternoon and tonight. He won't be able to eat for a few days. Make him vomit all the bile in his stomach. Yi Zi was Yi Ro's cousin, and the youngest daughter of third uncle Yi Daoling. Yi Zi was a student of Yanjing Shuimu University. After the holidays, she ran to her hometown Yanzhou for a vacation. Last night, Fang Yan forced her to abdicate. Although Yi Daoling received a phone call from his family, there were still some things that couldn't be explained clearly. Therefore, Yi Ro was ordered to go to Yanjing to talk to Yi Daoling. Through Yi Ro's narration, Yi Daoling had a clearer understanding of the importance of Fang Yan in this incident. Therefore, Yi Daoling ordered his assistant Lin Donghai, who was also from Yanzhou, to bring Fang Yan to his home. Fang Yan and Yi Ro met at Yi Daoling's home. Because of Fang Yan's unreasonable behavior, the two even lived in the same room. Although they got along harmoniously, and there were no hot-blooded or melodramatic incidents, on the way back to Yanzhou, Yi Ro received a message from Fang Yan. I used your toothbrush to brush my teeth. Yi Ro was ashamed and angry. If Fang Yan was by her side, she would definitely beat him up again. After returning, Yi Zi found Yi Ro's strangeness. Under her questioning, Yi Ro finally told the truth to this younger sister, who was a few years younger than her, but could confide in her. Yi Zi suddenly had an idea. She said that she would never let her sister suffer. She must make Fang Yan, that bad guy, pay a painful price. Therefore, the two went out early and began to implement the revenge plan they had discussed. Yi Ro said expressionlessly, I just don't want him to continue using that toothbrush. She knew that if it weren't for this morning's incident, Fang Yan would have continued to use that toothbrush and that toothbrush. Moreover, that toothbrush was indeed the toothbrush she used. Yi Zi smiled and said, Sister, have you thought about it? Why does Fang Yan want to use your toothbrush? For revenge, Yi Ro said. For what? For hitting him. Ah, is he that kind of person? A long time ago, when you were young, Yi Ro said with anger in her eyes. That year, after I defeated him in a martial arts competition, he bribed Yi Fengsheng to sneak into my room and use my toothbrush to brush the toilet. Ah, how could he be so shameless? How could he do such a thing? Yi Zi said angrily. She clenched her small fists and asked, Sister, have you used that toothbrush? If you have, isn't it too disgusting? No, Yi Ro said. I knew it. Sister, you are so smart and won't be fooled. Yi Zi looked at Yi Ro with admiration and said proudly, It's not that I'm smart. Yi Ro blushed. I didn't expect that he would take revenge on me in such a way. It's so childish. Then why? Yi Zi looked puzzled. Because someone told me. Yi Rou said. Chapter 390. The informant must be Yi Fengsheng, right? Humph, he still has some conscience. He is a member of our Yi family, but he always likes to help outsiders. Yezi was obviously very dissatisfied with Yi Fengsheng's usual behavior and criticized him. Not Yi Fengsheng, Yi Rou said. Yi Fengsheng was also deceived by him that time. Then who told you? Yezi was full of curiosity. Although she was also from Swallow Dock, she was taken to Yanjing by her parents to study when she was a child. She would only come back during the winter and summer vacations, or on some free Sundays. She didn't spend much time in Swallow Dock, but she knew that Fang Yan's friends were all loyal to him. This was especially true for their Hua Meimin's team member, who made people laugh their heads off. I promised them I wouldn't tell anyone, Yi Rou said. Sister. Yezi took Yi Rou's arm and acted like a spoiled child. Can you tell me in secret? Tell me in secret. I won't tell anyone anyway. You know I've always been on your side. Even if I tell you, it will still be said. Yi Rou shook her head. Humph, you're not loyal, Yezi said discontentedly. She walked quickly alone for a while, and the trace of unhappiness in her heart disappeared. She came back with a smile and said, Sister, does Fang Yan like you? Yi Rou glanced at Yezi and didn't answer the question. He must like you, Yezi said. If he doesn't like you, why would he brush his teeth with your toothbrush? Think about it, how disgusting it is to use someone else's toothbrush. You will only feel sweet if you use the toothbrush of the person you like. Humph, I won't like him. Right? Yi Rou glanced at Yezi and said, I'll try my best. What do you mean? Yezi looked at Yi Rou in surprise. Sister, don't tell me you like Fang Yan. He is so annoying. Yi Rou was silent. Yezi sighed and said, I never thought that one day I would have to call Fang Yan brother-in-law. You're not allowed to tell him that I helped you take revenge today. If he finds out, he won't let me live a good life because of his narrow-mindedness. Yi Rou smiled and said, He already knows. Why? Because you replied to his message, Yi Rou said. If it were you, what would you do? Just beat him up when we meet, Yi Rou said lightly. When Fang Yan walked into the living room, his father, Fang Yixing, and his mother Lu Wan were already having breakfast at the dining table. Just like before, Grandpa ate alone in his own room. When Lu Wan was about to ask Fang Yan to eat, she saw that Fang Yan's face was pale, his pupils were dilated, and even his hair was a little messy today. She hurriedly asked, Fang Yan, what's wrong with you? Are you feeling unwell? I'm fine. Fang Yan waved his hand and sat down on the chair. Did you catch a cold? If you don't feel well, you can eat something before going back to sleep. Fang Yixing scooped a bowl of corn porridge and placed it in front of Fang Yan. He also picked up a meat bun from the plate and placed it in front of Fang Yan. There was a hole in the meat bun, and rich oil flowed out. Fang Yan glanced at it and felt his stomach churning. He lay on his stomach and retched a few times, but nothing came out. The contents of his stomach were all vomited out. Fang Yixing and Lu Wan were shocked. Lu Wan walked over and touched Fang Yan's back, saying, Fang Yan, are you okay? If you don't want to eat, go to bed and lie down for a while. Fang Yixing grabbed Fang Yan's arm, felt his pulse and said, His pulse is calm. He should be fine. Maybe he's too tired. He'll be fine after a rest. I'm fine. I just ate something I shouldn't have. Of course, Fang Yan knew he was fine. He pushed the meat bun away, picked up the bowl of corn porridge, and gulped it down. Only then did he feel some heat and strength in his body. He pushed the chair away and stood up, saying, You guys eat slowly. I'm going to talk to the heroes. Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan were making straw dolls in the yard. They wrapped the straw dolls around the tree trunks, so that the plum trees wouldn't be frozen to death by the rare snow and ice. Today's winter was indeed colder than in previous years. Seeing Fang Yan coming out, Fang Yingying said to take credit. Junior Marshal Uncle, have you eaten? Just wait for a while. We'll finish wrapping 2 more trees. That way they won't be frozen. I thought about it seriously when I was dressing them just now. Everything is alive. Although I'm not a plum tree, I can understand their feelings. We human beings are afraid of heat and cold, and so are these living trees. What's the difference between them and us? Thank you for your advice. I think my Tai Chi is going to improve to a higher level. Fong Haohan looked up at Fong Yingying and said, "I've figured it out too. I think I'm going to make a breakthrough. Maybe I'll have the heart of Tai Chi after this breakthrough." Fong Yin was very satisfied with Fong Yingying and Fong Haohan's attitudes. He said, "The ancients said that humans are not plants. How can they be emotionless? In fact, the ancients are wrong. Don't plants have feelings? Don't they have souls? They could also be happy. They could also be sad. They could cry. They could also be hurt. They will experience the friendship between brothers, encounter the love between men and women, and bear the cold betrayal. By the way, what's Yi Gentle's phone number?" 136, Fong Yingying answered. After saying the 3 numbers, he realized that something was wrong. He looked at Fong Yin in horror. Fong Haohan looked at Fong Yingying, as if he was looking at an idiot. He thought to himself, "With such an IQ, how can we be called heroes?" Fong Yin looked at Fong Yingying coldly and said, "Say it. Go on." Fong Yingxiong blinked his innocent little eyes and thought for a while. Then he slapped himself on the forehead and said, "Look at my pig brain. I actually forgot such an important thing. What's behind it again? I haven't contacted Miss Yi for a long time. I even forgot her phone number. Fong Haohan, do you know her?" "I don't know." Fong Haohan denied firmly. He didn't want to be involved in this matter. "I've never contacted Miss Yi alone. She's Junior Marshal Uncle's opponent. Only Junior Marshal Uncle can contact her. That's impossible." Fong Yingying didn't want to let Fong Haohan escape. "In times of danger, you don't want me to die. I peeked at your phone a few days ago. I saw Miss Ye's phone number on it." "Oh yes, you deliberately marked Miss Ye's name with pinyin. YWR. These 3 letters should represent Miss Ye, right? Why didn't you just write Miss Ye's name? Is there some secret that can't be seen?" "I'm hot," Fong Haohan said. "YWR represents these 3 words. Junior Marshal Uncle is smart and wise. He's a genius. Do you think he will believe your lousy excuse?" Fong Yingying said with a sneer. "Fong Yingying!" Fong Yin shouted. Plop. Fong Yingying knelt down in front of Fong Yen. He hugged Fong Yan's leg and cried, "Junior Marshal Uncle, kick me to death. Kick me to death. I didn't want it. I didn't want to betray you. I've been regretting it ever since I did it. I couldn't eat well. I couldn't sleep well. I couldn't even wrap the plum tree's foreskin properly. I was sad and blamed myself. Junior Marshal Uncle, kick me to death. If this can make you feel better, I'll die without regrets." "You want me to kick you to death?" Fong Yin stared at Fong Yingying's funny fat face coldly and said, "Then let go of your stinky hand first." This fatso was too hypocritical. He shouted for others to kick him to death. But his hands were hugging Fong Yan's legs tightly. How could others kick him? "Junior Marshal Uncle, I didn't think that woman was so sinister. I was used by her." Fong Yingxiong cried with tears and snot on his face. "You also know that no girl has ever liked me since I was young. They would laugh when they saw me. They thought I was chubby and funny. But they were never willing to play with me. I'm a failure. I'm very pitiful. I have no experience with women. I don't understand their evil thoughts. I don't understand their methods of harming people. Junior Marshal Uncle, I don't want to live anymore. I really don't want to live anymore. I'm already so old. I still have my first love and first kiss. Tell me, what's the point of living like this?" Hearing Fong Yingying's confession, Fong Haohan couldn't help but feel sad. With red eyes, he sat down in the snow and said in a hoarse voice, "If there is a Yu, how can there be a Liang? If there is a Junior Marshal Uncle, how can there be a hero? We are excellent, but Junior Marshal Uncle is more excellent. All the girls in Swallow Dock like Junior Marshal Uncle. Our lives can only be so bitter." Even Fong Yen felt that he was being too cruel after they teamed up to do such a thing. "I'm just a little more handsome. Is that wrong? Is that wrong?" Okay. Fong Yen patted Fong Yingying's shoulder and said, "You just need to be honest. Tell me, did you send a message to Yi Ro this morning?" "I said you can't hit me?" "Of course," Fong Yen said. "Really? When did I lie to you?" "You used to lie to me. I didn't lie to you this time. I really didn't lie to you," Fong Yen said awkwardly. "I'm touched by you too. I feel sorry for you too. I received a message from Miss Yi when I was practicing my stance this morning. I thought she wanted to take me out for a walk. My heart was beating fast. I didn't know if I should accept or refuse. If I accepted, I felt sorry for you. If I refused, I was afraid that I would hurt Miss Yi's love. Forget it. You don't have to say it. I understand. Fang Yin felt it was too hard to talk to Fatso. Then he pressed down on Fang Yingying's head and punched him again and again. He had to admit that Yi Ro's way of doing things was sometimes simple and useful. Chapter 391. The teacher came back with a dung basket. From afar, he saw a figure kneeling at the door of his hut. He narrowed his eyes and walked over slowly. He poured the pig dung in the basket into the cesspool in the backyard, and put the basket in the corner outside the hut. Then, he took out a bunch of keys from his pocket, and prepared to open the lock. Sir, I was wrong. Fang Yin straightened his body and said in a deep voice. The teacher was deaf and didn't hear Fang Yin's words. He opened the copper lock, and pushed the door straight into the hut. He took off his sheepskin coat, and hung it on the wall. Then, he used an aluminum basin from the kettle on the stove to wash his face and hands. His face and hands were steaming, and the chill on his body was also dispelled a lot. The teacher opened the old teapot on the square table that had a hole in it. He grabbed a handful of broken tea leaves, and threw them into the teapot. Then, he took the antique bottle with the words, "Serving the people," printed on it, and poured water into the teapot. There were no complicated steps to make tea. It was simple and crude. When he felt that the tea leaves tasted good, he poured himself a bowl of tea with a big bowl, and blew it gently to drink. Sir, I'm here to apologize to you. Fang Yin, who was kneeling at the door, shouted again. The teacher was expressionless, and still pretended not to hear him. He stood at the threshold of the hut, and drank his big bowl of tea with relish. Sir, I'll take it that you forgive me if you don't speak. Fang Yin shouted loudly. The teacher still didn't speak. The teacher didn't speak, so Fang Yin didn't get up. He knew that sometimes he could be lively, but there were some things that he had to be serious. For example, now, the teacher didn't speak, and Fang Yin didn't speak either. One was standing inside the threshold, and the other was kneeling outside. The teacher lived in the back of the village, which faced the back of the mountain. The wild wind was whistling, and the snow was buried for thousands of miles. The whole world was a vast expanse of whiteness. Fang Yin became a small dot in this white world. The teacher stood and drank tea, while Fang Yin knelt. The teacher sat and listened to music, while Fang Yin knelt. Teacher was lying down and sleeping, while Fang Yin was kneeling. When the teacher woke up, he washed the rice and washed the pot to cook. He cut the salted fish into 2 pieces, and hung one piece on the wall, while the other was thrown into the rice pot. He went to the backyard and pulled a bunch of vegetables and a few shallots. He washed them in ice water and boiled them. Fang Yin was still kneeling. The teacher ate the salted fish rice, swallowed a few small vegetables, washed the bowls and chopsticks, brushed the iron pot clean, and poured water into the teapot for the morning, and drank a bowl of hot tea. Fang Yin was still kneeling. The warm sunshine in the morning disappeared without a trace at noon. The snowflakes that had stopped drifting once again. The snowflakes were soft, but the chill was hurtful. Fang Yin knelt in the wind and snow. His hair was messed up by the cold wind, and his body was covered in snow. Even his eyebrows were frozen. Fang Yin became a snowman, just like the snowmen they used to make when they were young. They put on a hat and a scarf to make it look like a real person. Fang Yin was the most vivid snowman, because he was a real person. When Fang Yin was kneeling, Swallow Dock was still as quiet as before. However, what was different from before was that many of the courtyard doors were open, and people were standing at the door looking into the distance. The Li family, an old lady in a gray cotton-padded jacket, stood at the door and asked, "Is the kid from the Fang family still kneeling?" "He's kneeling." Li Xiaotian stood behind the old lady and replied with a pained expression. "Sigh." The old lady sighed and said to her grandson, "This child has great ambitions. It's inevitable that he will suffer a little." The Yi family. Yi Daowen was stomping around in the study. He pushed open the window and asked the servant who was sweeping the snow outside, "Is Fang Yin still kneeling?" "He's kneeling," the servant replied. Crack. The window was closed again. The servant looked at each other and lowered his head to sweep the floor again. The Fong family. Old Master Fong Hui didn't ask for plum wine today, nor did he ask Fong Yingying and Fong Haohan to play chess with him. He asked someone to push him to the window. He didn't use a mattress to keep warm, nor did he wear the leather hat he used to keep warm. His big bald head was even brighter than the white snow outside. He looked out the window and at the plum trees wrapped in straw in the courtyard. Suddenly he lost his temper and scolded. Who wrapped it? Who wrapped it? How can there be such an exotic fragrance without experiencing the wind and snow? Tear it down. Tear all the straw for me. Fong Yingying and Fong Haohan didn't dare to refute. They hurriedly ran out to tear down the straw bundles that had been wrapped up this morning. At this moment, Fong Hui was full of murderous intent. He didn't look like a paralyzed person, but more like a fierce general who had just come down from the battlefield. Yi Ro pushed open the courtyard door. The old drunkard didn't even look at her and said, I'm drunk. You can do whatever you want. Then he lay down in the corner of the corridor and slept soundly. Loud snoring could be heard. Yi Ro patted the jar with her palm. The sealed mortar at the mouth of the jar flew out and disappeared. With a kick of her toes, the big jar in front of her flew into the air. The wine jar tilted slightly. As it fell, a stream of spring water poured down. Yi Ro opened her mouth and took a deep breath. Her posture was cool and arrogant. There were also many courtyard doors open, watching from afar. Today in Swallow Dock, everyone's eyes were focused on the young man kneeling in the wind and snow. Fong Yin was already a legend of Swallow Dock. The teacher drank 3 bowls of hot tea in a row. It wasn't until the teapot was empty, and the color of the tea became darker, and the taste more bitter, that the teacher put down the teacup. He shouted to the outside, Stop acting. Come in. Crack, Fong Yin got up from the snow. Because he hadn't moved for a long time, a thin layer of ice formed on his knees and calves in the snow. With a slight movement, the layer of ice broke with a crisp sound. Crack, crack, crack. This was the sound of all the bones in his body cracking. The stagnant qi and blood, and the stiff bones all relaxed and regained their vitality. Fong Yin had the heart of Tai Chi to protect his body, so he could keep the bitter cold from invading him. The ice and snow his body, and the heart of Tai Chi became a harmonious whole. The heart of Tai Chi became a bridge of communication between Fong Yin and the ice and snow. It transformed the ice and snow into a kind of energy and transmitted it to Fong Yin, so that Fong Yin could touch it gently and comfortably, instead of directly experiencing the attack of the bitter cold. Of course, if he had inner strength, he could also transform it into heat to resist the bitter cold and burn the ice and snow. However, the heart of Tai Chi was natural, and using inner strength to resist the cold consumed more mental and physical strength. It was difficult to maintain. This was also the reason why the heart of Tai Chi was more valuable than the other internal mental cultivation methods or strength techniques. When Fong Yin moved, the snow on his body fell, the frost on his eyebrows disappeared, and he became a living person with flesh and blood. There was an iron sword stuck in his back, the hilt facing down, the tip of the sword pointing up, hanging diagonally on his back. Fong Yin walked into the small room and said to the teacher, Teacher, I have come to apologize to you. What did I do wrong? The teacher asked. Fong Yin is young, so I shouldn't have made the decision to force Teacher Gong, Fong Yin said seriously. The teacher looked at Fong Yin and said, You didn't make the decision on your own. You have been planning this for a long time. Fong Yin knows his mistake. Fong Yin lowered his head and admitted his mistake. Fong Yin, now that you've forced Swallow Dock to abdicate, the entire Swallow Dock will move because of you. Have you ever thought that while you're fighting for Swallow Dock's benefits, you're also pushing Swallow Dock to the world? Is this good or bad for Swallow Dock? In ancient times, there was the right to release troops with a cup of wine. There was also the saying, when the cunning hare is dead, the hound is cooked, and when the birds are gone, the fine bough is hidden. When the country is in trouble, we use our swords to solve the problem. When the country is peaceful, we bury our swords and plow the fields. We are all martial artists wholeheartedly practicing martial arts and seeking the way, living a peaceful life. peaceful and beautiful, reproducing for 1,000 years. Isn't that good? 30 years of fame and glory, dust and soil. A beautiful dream of a golden bridge, all for nothing. What are we fighting for? What are we fighting for? Teacher, I know my mistake. Fang Yin lowered his head even more. You are not wrong. The teacher shook his head. Young people, with lofty words and lofty aspirations, who doesn't want to kill the enemy on the battlefield? Who doesn't want to be famous everywhere? Who doesn't want to carve a stone to record their achievements and write their name on the stone tablet at the entrance of Swallow Dock? My duty is to protect the continuation of the bloodline of Swallow Dock, to ensure that the loyalty of Swallow Dock will not change, and that the martial arts will not decline. So I hope to keep a low profile and remain silent, just like I have been for hundreds of years, willing to be forgotten by the world. You have chosen another path, one that is aggressive and cruel. There is no right or wrong, but have you thought clearly which path is more suitable for Swallow Dock? Fang Yen raised his head to look at the teacher and said in a clear voice, I swear on my life that the loyalty of Swallow Dock will not change, and that the martial arts will not decline. We train hard in martial arts, ponder day and night, just to strengthen our bodies and promote justice. We swear to protect our country with our lives, shed our blood, and those who offend us, Huaxia, will be punished no matter how far away they are. Teacher, the world is changing, and so are we. I have never thought about whether this path is right or wrong. I only thought about the right or wrong of this matter. I am not willing to be aggressive. I am even more unwilling to be cruel. I only hope that we will not be bullied. I only have this small ambition. The teacher pondered for a long time, looked at Fang Yen and said, Since you have already thought it through, why are you apologizing? Teacher will always be teacher, Fang Yen's teacher, Swallow Dock's teacher. I have no respect for my elders, I have disobeyed teacher, so naturally I have to apologize, Fang Yen said without changing his expression. Fang Yen, kneel, the teacher said. Fang Yen obeyed and knelt down. You have a son, Fang Yen, who has no respect for his elders, and who is audacious and presumptuous. He has disobeyed Mr. and placed Swallow's Dock in a dangerous situation. Mr. stretched out his hand and drew the iron sword from Fang Yan's back. He said, Severely punish him with 3 strokes as punishment. The teacher held the long sword in his hand, and the blade struck straight at Fang Yan's head. Chapter 392. It's not good to be too smart. Fang Yen took the initiative to bring his friends to force Teacher Gong, which was a serious mistake for Swallow Dock and Teacher Gong. Originally, he wanted to carry a few branches over. Didn't the ancients play the trick of carrying thorns to ask for punishment? However, could a man from Swallow Dock do such a thing? Wouldn't you be insulting teacher and yourself by carrying a few thorns? Even if teacher broke those thorns, he wouldn't be able to do anything to you. Instead, it would be a waste of his old strength. By doing such a thing, you would make teacher angry for no reason. Fang Yen hesitated again and again, and with Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan, the 2 inept military counselors, he finally decided to carry the sword and apologize. First, the sword looked imposing and murderous. At first glance, he looked like an iron-blooded man from Swallow Dock. Teacher Gong was happy at first glance, and it was easy for those young girls and pretty wives to size him up when he walked on the road, which could add points to his appearance. Second, the weight of the sword was heavier than the thorns, which showed Fang Yan's determination to sincerely admit his mistake. He didn't run away, wasn't afraid, and faced his mistakes bravely. If you want to kill me or cut me up, you can do whatever you want. The grandfather will take it. No, the grandson will take it. Fang Yen had already carried the sword. At the critical moment, Fang Yingying asked a question. What if Teacher Gong kills you in a rage? The 3rd martial nephew of the Fang family was suddenly stunned. Yes, Teacher Gong suffered such a big loss, and Fang Yan's behavior was obviously different from Teacher Gong's usual ideas. Teacher Gong would draw his sword and kill Fang Yen, or cut Fang Yen in a rage. What should he do? This problem had to be carefully considered. In the end, under Fang Yingying's initiative proposal and Fang Haohan's strong request, Fang Yen had to reluctantly accept this dishonorable decision and used the sword prop they usually used in the game. There was a mechanism in that sword, and it would break into two pieces with a little force. In the past, when Fang Yan and the others were playing with their friends, they often used this kind of prop sword to attack each other, in order to express their high kung fu and the depth of their inner force. As the two of them were competing with their internal energy, the sword in the friend's hand suddenly broke into two pieces. One piece fell to the ground, while the other pierced the opponent's abdomen. Before the victim died, he said in horror, "You've actually learned sword-breaking technique?" Fang Yan's face was burning, as if he had been slapped in the face dozens of times. The current situation was not very good to look at. Fang Yan quickly got up from the ground and explained, "Mister, please don't be angry. I was just joking with you. You've been living in this deserted village for a long time, and there's not much entertainment. You must be bored. I'm just here to relieve Sir's boredom. Make Mister laugh." The old skin on Mister's face twitched. His gray eyes stared at Fang Yan with an expression that said, "Did you see me smile?" Fang Yan looked around the room and pulled out a dusty iron sword from the corner of the wall. He said, "Come, I'll find a new sword. If you want to kill me or cut me up, you can do whatever you want. As long as you are my mister for a day, you will always be my mister. To be able to die under Mister's sword, I have no regrets." Forget it, forget it." Mister waved his hand and looked seriously at Fang Yan. He said, "Fang Yan, I understand your intentions. I have my own way of thinking, but you've ultimately chosen the path you want to walk. As I said earlier, there's no right or wrong. There's only suitability. Whether it's suitable or not, we can only find out as we go on. You've already led Swallow Dock to take a step forward, so Swallow Dock can no longer retreat. Others won't allow us to retreat either, so we can only move forward. Since you've led Swallow Dock to take the first step, then lead Swallow Dock to continue moving forward. You are duty-bound to fulfill this mission. Mister, I'm not suitable, right? I feel that I'm too careless and have a glib tongue. I can't handle too much pressure, and I want to turn and run at the first sign of danger. Why don't you choose someone else? I feel that Bai Xiu is not bad. He's mature and steady, broad-minded, and has outstanding abilities. Most importantly, the men and women of Swallow Dock, old and weak, all admire him and give him a thumbs up whenever he's mentioned. Bai Xiu is much more suitable than me." Mister stared at Fang Yan with a sharp gaze and said, "Fang Yan, put away your cunning thoughts. Do you think I'll think you're useless just because you've provoked me with a lousy sword? Your personality is exactly the same as your grandfather, Fang Hui, in the past. Temper, no courage. Ability, less responsibility. Your grandfather has been wronged all his life, and the second half of his life has been sullen. Can't you, as his grandson, fight for him?" Fang Yan held the dusty iron sword in his hand and sighed softly. "Mister, the responsibility is great. I'm afraid I can't bear it. As long as you do your best, who will blame you when the time comes?" Mister said heroically and domineeringly. "If anyone is dissatisfied, tell him to come and talk to me. See if I don't use the iron sword to break his head. See if I don't use the iron sword to break his head." Only Mister could say this. No one else dared to say it, nor did they have the right to say it. Mister was Mister, Swallow Dock's Mister. Mister patted Fang Yan's shoulder and said, "Go. You're not alone. Swallow Dock will always be your strong shield. As long as I'm alive, I'll support you as well." Fang Yan was silent and bowed deeply to Mister. He turned around and left, solemn and stirring. From this day on, from this moment on, he would shoulder another responsibility. It was a responsibility that could not be seen or touched, but was so heavy that it made others breathless. This kid. Mister smiled and shook his head. "Mister." Bai Xiu appeared in front of Mister. He had black hair, a white robe, and was barefooted. At first glance, he looked like a lonely ghost or a lunatic. However, his black hair was too natural and soft, and his white robe was too plain and clean. His entire person looked gentle and refined, and it was easy to give people a good impression. "I was almost tricked by this hairy monkey again," Mister said proudly. "When dealing with this kid, your head has to turn a few times. It's never wrong to think about everything more than a few times." He was able to kneel in the snow for so long without a word of complaint. But he couldn't bear this little punishment. Did he need to bring out a broken sword to embarrass himself? He just wanted to make me angry, so that I would push him aside and choose someone else to bear this responsibility. This lazy guy, I won't let him have his way. See? Monkey-san still couldn't escape the palm of Buddha Tathagata's hand. Mister's wisdom is as vast as the sea. This little trick of his naturally has nowhere to hide. Baishio said respectfully. What wisdom is as vast as the sea? Mr. waved his hand and said with a humble expression. The longer one lived, the more reverence one had for things like life. I've only lived a few more years than you guys, seen a little more, and heard a little more, that's all. Mister, Fang Yin took your Qingyan sword, Baishio said. Mister was stunned and asked, when? When he bowed to you with a face full of affection, Baishio said. Mister, do you want to get it back? Baishio asked. Forget it, Mister said with a wave of his hand. Good wind, send me to Qingyan. This Qingyan sword has accompanied me for decades, and has never been unsheathed. I'll give it to him, and send him straight to Qingyan. Baishio smiled and said, Mister, you really like Fang Yin. He took advantage of you, and made you speechless. How can I not like such a kid? Smart people do have an advantage in this world. Yes, Baishio said with a nod. He took the cold bowl from Mister's hand, and heated it with boiling water. He then poured a bowl of hot water and put it in Mister's hand, saying, Drink less tea and drink more water. You've just handed such an important responsibility to Fang Yin. Don't you want to live a few more years and see how far he can take Swallow Dock? Mister patted the back of Baishio's hand and said, This kid is smart, but smart people go to extremes too easily. If Swallow Dock is in danger, you must stop him. Mister, I understand. Baishio nodded solemnly. Swallow Dock is Fang Yan's Swallow Dock, and it is also my Swallow Dock. Mister smiled and said, My spirit is tired after fighting with that kid in a battle of wits and courage. You go, I'll lie down and rest for a while. Baishio didn't leave immediately. Instead, he helped light the pile of firewood, helped Mister lie down on the chair, and covered him with a mattress before closing the wooden door and leaving. Creak! The wooden door closed, and the man lying on the chair opened his eyes. In the light of the fire, his pupils shone with a multicolored luster. His eyes were deep and distant, like the endless snowy plains outside the thatched cottage, and like the starry sky that covered the entire earth. This was an old man with wisdom and experience. These young people, he looked at the fire in front of him and said softly, I hope this is Swallow Dock's good fortune. Fang Yin held the green cloud sword and walked back like a thief who had gotten his hands on him. However, at the edge of the pond in front of his house, he ran into a black-clothed woman who was throwing a snowball into the pond. The woman grabbed a handful of snow from the snow under her feet and squeezed it. A smooth little ball appeared in her palm. She threw the little ball toward the pond's icy surface. The little ball slid forward on the ice. This was a little game that Fang Yin had taught her. Swallow Dock wasn't a bustling place. It didn't have bars or karaoke, but the children naturally had their own ways of picking up girls that weren't inferior to the methods of the children in the city. Fang Yin looked at her back for a while and felt that it was best not to have any contact with her. Holding his sword, he prepared to sneak past her without making a sound. Are you pretending not to know me or pretending not to see me? The woman suddenly turned around and looked at the escaping Fang Yin with a smile. Chapter 393. Are you pretending not to know me or pretending not to see me? This question was really difficult to answer. Seeing Fang Yan's bewildered expression, Phoenix threw a snowball at Fang Yan and said, Take this. Pa! The snowball hit Fang Yan's chest and broke into snowflakes. They fell down and became one with the snow again. Phoenix did not have the joy of hitting the target. She just looked at Fang Yan and asked, Why don't you dodge? Do you want to dodge? Fang Yan said with a smile. Didn't you always want to hit me before? I really want to hit you, but I know I can't hit you. Phoenix said with a smile. Her smile looked lonely. I can't hit you, so I always want to hit you. You don't even want to dodge. This is really, how can this game continue? Have you ever played snowball throwing? The greatest joy of this game was not hitting, but dodging. One side desperately chased, the other side desperately dodged. The one who chased was hell-bent, and the one who dodged was willing. If the one who chased hit every snowball, and the one who dodged stood still, this game must be quite boring, right? I'm sorry, Fang Yin said. He could feel Phoenix's emotions. He knew that she was very unhappy. He shouldn't have said sorry, or rather, he shouldn't have said sorry. But he didn't know what was going on, but he said it so naturally. It was as if he had really done something wrong to Phoenix. Perhaps such a farewell was really hurtful? Fang Yin, you've changed. Phoenix's hands were in the pockets of her trench coat. She was clearly not in the mood to continue playing with snowballs. Her figure was tall and graceful. Her slightly curly hair was blown by the cool wind and slapped on her face, giving her a poignant charm. Fang Yin looked into Phoenix's eyes and nodded very seriously. He said, "A lot of things have changed." "Yes, a lot of things have changed and a lot of people have changed," Phoenix said softly. "In the past you took things as they came. Apart from the advancement of your cultivation, you didn't care about anything else." Fang Yin smiled and said, "I still care about some other things, but you don't care about those things." "How do you know I don't care? Have you ever cared?" Phoenix smiled and shook her head. "Mind or not, there's no point in talking about this. I heard what happened last night. That was a beautiful win. This is Fang Yin. This is the Fang Yin I know. This is the Fang Yin who always brings surprises." Fang Yin was silent. He didn't know what to say. Perhaps not saying anything was the most appropriate response. "I never thought such a day would come," Phoenix said with a smile. "The two of us stand facing each other, speechless. Don't you think this scene is very awkward?" "Actually, it's all right," Fang Yin said. He also felt very awkward. He had the urge to quickly end this and run away. "The reason for this situation is because you are more concerned about the feelings of another person." Phoenix was like a caring sister. She explained, "There is nothing to say when you are with your first love, because your feelings have changed. You feel a trace of guilt and embarrassment when facing me. No matter how smart you are still a kind person." Fang Yin thought about it seriously and said, "Perhaps you are right. You have always been able to give me the best advice and the most professional analysis from the perspective of a bystander. Can you tell me who that person is? Don't you already know? Talking to you is no longer interesting," Phoenix said. She opened her arms and said, "This is the true meaning of farewell, right? Come, let's hug one last time." Fang Yin hesitated. "What? Are you afraid or unwilling?" Phoenix said with some dissatisfaction. "When a girl makes such a request, even if you are 100 times unwilling, you should at least put on a perfunctory act. Do you know that such an expression of yours is very hurtful? Am I so loathsome?" "I am just worried." Fang Yin walked towards Phoenix step by step and said, "The sword in my hand will hurt you." "The sword is not out of its sheath. How can it hurt me?" Phoenix asked. Then, she licked her dry lips and said very seriously, "Even if I am hurt by your sword, I will not blame you. I am telling the truth." "I believe you," Fang Yin said. He held the sword with one hand and walked over to hug Phoenix. The warm and fragrant body entered his arms, but Fang Yin did not feel happy or ambiguous. Instead, he felt that his heart was very blocked, and his whole body became heavy. The beautiful girl in his arms was his beauty, the youth of his youth. He wanted to see his favorite movie with her. He wanted to walk through every mountain and river with her. He wanted to see every river with her. They were the eyes he saw when he opened his eyes every morning. They were the sweet dreams he had every night. He wanted to dedicate all of his beauty to her. He wanted to protect her for the rest of her life. At that time, she was the most important person to him. Now they said goodbye in such an understated way. Goodbye to the girl, goodbye to his first love, goodbye to the good things, goodbye to a lifetime. The two of them hugged each other tightly. They were reluctant to part, but they were also ruthless and determined. Phoenix was not in a good mood either. She said in a low voice, "Then I wish you good luck." "You too," Fang Yin said. After saying goodbye like this, Fang Yin thought that Phoenix would leave his arms. But Phoenix did not. "I have to leave something to remember," Phoenix said. "What?" Clicked the sound of a shutter clicking. Only then did Phoenix let go of Fang Yen. Looking at the camera of her and Fang Yen hugging tightly, she said, "I will send it to the lady and tell her that we have said goodbye. I have become your past tense. You see, I am so considerate of you." Phoenix giggled. "Fang Yen, now you know that I am the best to you, right?" "I know." Fang Yen smiled bitterly. "If you delete it, this feeling will be more profound." "I will not delete it." Phoenix refused Fang Yan's proposal. She waved to Fang Yen and said, "Goodbye, Fang Yen." "Goodbye," Fang Yen said. "Happy New Year." "Unhappy New Year." Phoenix smiled. "The new year will not be happy." Phoenix waved her hand at Fang Yen. Placing both her hands into the pockets of her coat, she gracefully walked into the snowstorm. Her figure was quickly swallowed up by the snowstorm, becoming an indistinct dot. "Goodbye." Fang Yen waved and said softly, "Whether happy or not, the new year arrived as scheduled." New Year's Eve was getting closer and closer, and there were more and more relatives at home. Fang Hui had 2 sons and 3 daughters. His youngest son Beihai died in battle. His eldest son Fang Yixing was fond of calligraphy and painting, and had no interest in martial arts. After Fang Hui's legs were disabled, there was no successor for Fang family Tai Chi. However, his disciple, Mo Qingdi, quickly rose to support the Fang family. When Mo Qingdi was at his peak, the Fang family was also at its peak. No one dared to underestimate the enemy in Jianghu. However, Mo Qingdi fell like a comet, and the Fang family was once again in decline. Those few years were a nightmare for Fang Hui, the old man of the Fang family. The grumpy old man suffered one blow after another, but he still maintained a positive and optimistic attitude, because he still had hope. His grandson Fang Yen was his hope. He placed all his enthusiasm and expectations on Fang Yen. He personally taught Fang Yen martial arts and supervised his stance training. At a young age, Fang Yen was under unimaginable pressure. Fang Yan's erratic personality was born during that period. The pressure was too great, and he had no way to vent. He did not dare to vent, so he could only use these unreasonable little methods to express his dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction with his family, dissatisfaction with his surroundings, dissatisfaction with the unfairness of fate. That was all. This was the biggest protest a young man could express. Fang Yen had 3 aunts. The eldest and second aunts were married in Swallow Dock. The eldest aunts, Fang Yi, married his grandfather's disciple, Fang Hao, so their daughter Fang Minjing also had the surname Fang. The second aunt, Fang Yiling, married into the Zhao family of Swallow Dock. When the old man of the Zhao family was young, he had fought with his grandfather, Fang Hui, several times, and lost every battle. The relationship between the 2 families was not harmonious until now. The youngest aunts had a wild personality. When she was studying at Pearl Institute of Foreign Languages, she fell in love with a classmate. After graduation, she stayed in Pearl Institute. The Fang family was very open-minded. The elders never interfered with their children's marriage. Of course, Fang Yen was an exception. According to the past practice, every year on New Year's Eve, the eldest and second aunts would bring their family to the old house to have New Year's Eve dinner with the old man. The youngest aunts used to spend the spring festival with her husband's family in Pearl Institute. This year, she brought her family back. The New Year's Eve was also a reunion night. Who didn't want to sit together with their family? Hearing that his youngest daughter was coming back, the old man Fang Hui was naturally happy from ear to ear. Ever since she was a child, he liked his youngest daughter the most. The youngest aunts called home in advance and said that they would be back for dinner on the 28th. Lu Wan told them that a sumptuous dinner was prepared early at home. But when it was 8 o'clock in the evening, the youngest aunts and their family still did not come back. Lu Wan called to urge them, but the youngest aunt's mobile phone was turned off. The Fang family was very anxious. Lu Wan shouted and asked Fang Yen to take Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan to drive out to pick them up. She was afraid that the road from Yinjing City to Yanzhou was not easy to drive, and the car should not break down on the road. Fang Yen was also worried about the safety of the youngest aunts. He called Fang Yingying and was ready to drive in the direction of Yinjing to look for them. If the car really had a problem, they could also exchange the car with them, and let them come back to warm up first. As soon as Fang Yan and Fang Yingying drove away from the gate of the courtyard, they saw a black Mercedes-Benz stopped in front of the gate. The back door was pushed open, and a young man wearing a thick down jacket jumped out. He looked around the village and wilderness and said discontentedly, "Mom, what kind of place is this? Are we going to spend the new year here?" Chapter 394. Zhou Mingli was very unhappy. When he was unhappy, he had to make others unhappy as well. He didn't agree to go back to the countryside for the spring festival. It was dirty, broken, boring, and poor. What was there to go? If he had a little bit of expectation for the village life before. After listening to the complaints of his classmates who had experience living in the countryside, that little bit of expectation disappeared without a trace. It turned into deep contempt and disgust. Did you know? They washed their clothes and vegetables in a small ditch at the door. They washed the vegetables downstream, and there are children peeing in the water above. I don't even dare to touch the vegetables on the plate when I eat. Whenever I see the vegetables, I think of those children peeing in the water. Their toilets are all outside the courtyard. There are no doors. When you are enjoying yourself, suddenly someone barges in. Once I was so scared that I almost fell into the Kong bed. Yes, you didn't hear wrong. Their toilets are big Kong beds. The feces inside are piled up together to ferment. There are also maggots that crawl on your shoes. What's wrong with that? The meat they eat may have maggots. They are reluctant to throw away the meat with maggots. They wash the maggots off, and then continue to eat. It's so disgusting. Zhou Mingli didn't want to eat vegetables that were washed with the river water that the children peed on. He didn't want to use the toilet, where maggots might crawl on his shoes. He felt disgusted when he thought of the meat with maggots on it. He didn't want to come, and neither did his father. However, his mother, Fang Yijing, insisted that she must go back to her hometown for the spring festival this year. She hadn't spent the spring festival in her hometown for many years. His father couldn't hold on any longer, and agreed to his mother's request. It was hard for him to survive alone, so he had to come back. He felt that since his mother's hometown was next to Yanjing City, how poor could it be? However, the bumpy road, the car skidded a few times and almost fell into the ditch. He was filled with fear and disgust for the place he was going to. When he arrived at his destination, and saw that he was actually in a primitive village, he felt that the urine-soaked vegetables and maggots in the toilet were waving in front of him. He couldn't suppress the anger in his heart anymore. He didn't dare to vent his anger on his parents, but he dared to say a few undignified words in front of his poor relatives. They could only listen to him sullenly, and then apologize to him, saying that the conditions were not good, and that he should forgive them. Wasn't this the style and behavior of a farmer? At least, that was what Zhou Mingli thought. It was said that children's words carried no harm, but this brat's words caused the hearts of the smiling relatives to turn cold. A son does not despise his mother for being ugly, and a son does not despise his family for being poor. Swallowdock could be considered as half of Zhou Mingli's hometown. Being belittled and scolded like this made people feel very uncomfortable. Besides, the people of Swallowdock were naturally proud. They were suspicious and looked down on everything in the outside world. When the proud people of Swallow's Dock heard Zhou Mingli describe Swallow's Dock as a place where even birds don't shit, some people's faces turned ugly. Lu Wan and First Aunt Fang Yisan stood at the front of the crowd to welcome them. Hearing Zhou Mingli's words, they could not help but stop. When the two of them stopped, the others naturally stopped as well. When the atmosphere was awkward, Fang Yijing walked out from the other side of the car and shouted, "Zhou Mingli, what are you talking about? This was Swallow Dock. Mother's home. I was born and raised here. I think it's pretty good. What are you dissatisfied with?" Zhou Mingli twitched his mouth. Obviously, he did not agree with his mother's point of view. He just did not want to argue with her. The door of the front passenger seat was pushed open. Fang Yijing's husband Zhou Fan opened the door and got off. He glanced at his son and said to his wife, "Forget it. The kid was just joking. Don't take it to heart. Zhou Mingli is also a boy. You should save him some face in front of others." Zhou Fan also felt that it was a trivial matter. Moreover, his son was right. Swallow's Dock was a place where even birds don't shit. It was his third or fourth time coming here, but he still could not remember the way. Later, when his wife came back, he used the excuse that he was busy with work to refuse. He really did not want to come to this place. Fang Yijing was angry, but she could not argue with her husband and son in front of her brother and sister-in-law. Their views were deeply rooted. She could not change them in a short time. Zhou Fan stood there and looked at everyone arrogantly. He smiled and said, "Sister-in-law, sorry we came back late." Luwan had calmed down. She said, "It's okay. It's good that you are back. Everyone is waiting for you to eat." She turned to look at Zhou Mingli and said, "Is this Zhou Mingli? I hugged him when he was born, and I went to drink when he was 1 year old. How did he become so big in the blink of an eye?" "Sister-in-law." Fang Yijing walked over and held Luwan's hand. She said, "I'm sorry. Everyone must be anxious, right?" After getting off the plane, Zhou Fan said that since he was in Yanjing, he wanted to visit the leaders. After all, it would be more respectful to visit them before the new year. "My phone ran out of battery again, so I couldn't contact you." "It's okay." Luwan smiled and said, "It's good that you are back safely. We were worried that something happened to you on the way, so we were going to ask Fang Yan to drive to find you." Fang Yan parked the car and walked over. He greeted his sister-in-law and said, "Sister-in-law, long time no see." "Fang Yan." Sister-in-law hugged Fang Yan and said, "Your mother just said that Zhou Mingli grew fast. Don't you grow faster? You can get married now, right? Do you have a girlfriend? If you do, you must bring her home for the new year. I will help you." Fang Yan was the only child of the Fang family, so he was very loved by his 3 aunts. Fang Yan had a good relationship with his sister-in-law. His sister-in-law hadn't come back for several years, and he hadn't seen her for a long time. His heart was full of joy. "Of course," Fang Yan said with a smile. He then greeted Zhou Fan and said, "Uncle, welcome home." "Yes." Zhou Fan nodded and shook hands with Fang Yixing. He said, "Is the meal ready? I have to have a few drinks with my brother today." Zhou Fan took the initiative to talk to Fang Yixing, but Fang Hao and Zhao Qingxin, who were standing next to Fang Yixing, ignored him. Fang Hao was fine. He was a poor child and was adopted as a disciple by old Master Fang. Later, he fell in love with his master's eldest daughter, Fang Yisan, and married into the Fang family. Zhao Qingxin was a member of the Zhao family in Swallow Dock. The Zhao family not only had a high status in Neijiang, but they also had many industries outside. They were naturally proud people. He took the initiative to greet them, but Zhou Fan ignored him, so he was naturally unhappy. Fang Yixing pulled Zhou Fan into the yard and said, "It's already ready. We have to have a few drinks today. Fang Hao Qingxin, don't think about being lazy. You have to accompany Zhou Fan today. It's rare for him to come back. Numerology, come and see your eldest cousin." Fang Yijing pulled Zhou Numerology in front of Fang Yan and said, "This is the cousin Fang Yan I told you about." Fang Yan reached out his hand. Zhou Numerology curled his lips and said, "You don't have to be so old-fashioned. You even have to shake hands." Fang Yijing slapped Zhou Numerology's head and said, "How can you talk to your cousin like that?" Fang Yan waved his hand and said, "It's okay. I'm doing this because of my condition. In fact, I don't like to shake hands with people easily." Hearing what Fang Yan said, Zhou Numerology had a good impression of Fang Yan. He looked at Fang Yan and asked, "My mom said that everyone in your family knows martial arts. Is that true?" "Yes." Fang Yan nodded. Zhou Numerology pointed at a bluestone brick at the door and said, "Can you break it with one palm?" Fang Yan laughed and said, "More or less." "Really?" Zhou Mingli's eyes widened and he said, "Show me how you do it." Fang Yan refused and said, "Why do you have to break the brick? You've been on the road for a day. Go in and eat something. Are you hungry?" "We've already eaten," Zhou Numerology said impatiently. "We ate at Yanjing Hotel." "My dad went to visit his leader for the new year, so we ate at Yanjing Hotel." "Can you really break bricks? You're not lying, are you?" Zhou Numerology. Fang Yijing couldn't help but want to lose his temper. This bastard child. Why did he say all the things he shouldn't say? She called home in advance, and said that she would come back to have dinner with everyone at night. However, when they arrived at Yinjing, her husband wanted to visit his leader. It was better to be early than late. The leader would be busy after the new year, so there was no chance to meet. Visiting before the new year showed respect for the leader, and it could leave a deep impression on the leader. Her husband wanted to climb his career, so as his wife, she could only support him. When they arrived at the hotel, her son said that he was hungry again. She said that they would eat after they got home, but her husband made the decision to order a big meal for his son. It was fine if he ate, but he shouted it out in front of everyone. How would the starving relatives at home feel? Fang Yin raised his eyebrows slightly, but he didn't want to argue with his aunt's child. He said, "What's there to lie about this? It's a very common thing, but I don't think it's necessary. This is a brick for the door, and we need it to close the door." For the men of Swallow Dock, breaking bricks with one hand was more common than using an axe to chop firewood. It was not something worth showing off. He also didn't want to excitedly perform breaking bricks when the child asked. There must be more important things to do when meeting with family. Plus, he was really hungry after waiting for so long. "I didn't say anything wrong," Zhou Numerology said to his mother, dissatisfied. "You said that everyone in your family is a martial arts master, and they don't even dare to break bricks. What kind of swallow village is this? It's a lie, isn't it?" Fang Yen slapped Zhou Numerology's head and said with a smile, "This child is quite mischievous." Plop! Zhou Numerology lost his balance and fell to the ground. Chapter 395. Zhou Mingli was born in a family of officials. His grandfather was an official in the Pearl Bank system, and his father also held an important position in the banking system. Because they dealt with money all day long, their family was naturally not short of money. And because he was the eldest son of the Zhou family, he was very spoiled. Usually, he could get whatever he wanted, even if he wanted the moon in the sky. That was impossible. He had never suffered any setbacks or hardships. This also developed his arrogant and violent character, and he would lose his temper if he was slightly dissatisfied. Because he didn't want to come to Swallow Dock for the spring festival, his mother forced him to come. He didn't dare to vent his anger on his mother, but he wouldn't be stingy to pour it on the villagers of Swallow Dock. "If you didn't live here, how could we come to such a place where even birds don't shit?" After seeing the luxurious life in Yanjing City, he didn't want to leave. However, his parents insisted on leaving, and he couldn't spend the spring festival alone. The road was blocked by snow, and the wind was howling. The driver assigned by his father's leader almost drove the car into the ditch without any guardrail signs on both sides of the road several times. The driver gossiped a few times, which made the Zhou family feel quite disgraced. Having such poor relatives was indeed not something to be proud of. At least Zhou Fan could hide this unhappiness in his heart, but Zhou Mingli didn't care and showed it on his face. After arriving at Swallow Dock, seeing the scattered houses on the snowy plain, he felt like banging his head against the wall. This place in the middle of nowhere, except for the village, was surrounded by wilderness and lonely mountains. This was the destination where they had to stay for a few days and spend their precious winter vacation time. Zhou Mingli had the urge to turn around and run. His mother told him countless times that their village was a very amazing place, and that everyone in the village had powerful martial arts. Zhou Mingli was skeptical about this sentence. How powerful could they be? Breaking a brick with one punch? Breaking 2 planks with one kick? However, this was the era of technology. So what if you had martial arts? Before you could rush in front of others, you would be killed by them with one shot. Every clown in the acrobatic troupe had unique skills. But didn't they also have to jump around in the air and rely on other people's tips for a living? Even so, this was still a reason for Zhou Mingli to have a little expectation for this village. Perhaps, he could always find something new to boast to his friends when he returned. Therefore, after seeing Fang Yan, he wanted to verify his mother's words and his own thoughts. He pointed at the brick and asked Fang Yan to split it open. Didn't the villagers have a desire to show off in front of the city people? If he asked them to do what they were most proud of, They must be eager to show off, right? He did not expect that his eldest cousin, Fang Yan, would actually reject him. Not only did Fang Yan not give him face, but it also made him feel that the only highlight of this trip to the countryside had disappeared. There was no splitting brick at all, it was their lies. He became violent again, wishing that he could jump up and give Fang Yan a good beating. Although he didn't make a move, his tone was already impolite. The person he was facing was Fang Yan, and the person he was insulting was Swallow Dock. Fang Yan had just accepted the important task that was entrusted to him by the master, and he had become one with Swallow Dock. Therefore, the tragedy happened naturally. When Zhou Mingli got out of the car, Fang Yan drove his grandpa's classic car to the shed. He didn't hear Zhou Mingli scolding Swallow Dock as a place where birds don't even shit. However, when Zhou Mingli said that Swallow Fort was a village of lies, he did it right in front of him. How could there be liars in Swallow Dock? How could there be liars in Swallow Dock? With Fang Yan's temper, how could he tolerate such a thing? Thus, he slapped him across the face. This was a slap from Fang Yan. How could Zhou Mingli bear it? His knees went soft, and he fell to the ground. Because they were standing outside the door to talk, Zhou Mingli insisted on letting Fang Yan smash the brick on the door. When Fang Yan slapped him on the head, Zhou Mingli was unlucky and fell on the door sill. Half of his body was pressed on the raised doorway. If it wasn't for his thick down jacket, his ribs would have been crushed. Mingli, Fang Yijing saw his son suddenly fall on the ground and quickly ran over to help him up. Zhou Fan and Fang Yixing had already entered the courtyard. When they heard their son scream, they quickly turned around and saw Zhou Mingli lying on the ground, unable to move. Fang Yan moved even faster. Before Fang Yijing and Zhou Fan came over, he had already pulled Zhou Mingli up from the ground. He patted the snow and dust off his body and asked, "Mingli, are you okay? Are you hurt? The road in the village is slippery. Be careful." Fang Yijing and Zhou Fan finally reached their son's side. Fang Yijing held his son and asked, "Mingli, how do you feel? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Zhou Fan stared at the doorway in front of him and asked, "You have to watch where you're going. How did you fall?" Zhou Mingli felt waves of pain in his chest, but his anger made him lose his mind. He pointed at Fang Yan and shouted, "He slapped my head. He slapped me on purpose." "Mingli," Fang Yijing shouted, "don't talk nonsense." "I'm not talking nonsense. It's all his fault." Zhou Mingli was unforgiving. His voice was as sharp as a knife as he said, "I told him to split the brick, but he didn't know how to do it. He slapped my head. He did it on purpose. He hit me on purpose." Zhou Fan looked at Fang Yan and asked, "Fang Yan this?" Fang Yan smiled bitterly and said, "I did slap Mingli's head, but it was a touch, a light touch. He asked me to split the brick, but I didn't agree. I felt that this child was quite mischievous, so I couldn't help but pat his head. I used to pat Fang Minjiang and Fang Mingxiang's heads. But this was all because of me. I apologized to Mingli." "Mingli, that's enough." Fang Yijing was furious, stared at Zhou Mingli with an unfriendly gaze and said, "Are you done? If you are, then go rest in your room. Didn't you already eat? You don't have to eat dinner." Zhou Fan glanced at Fang Yan and smiled. "Mingli is still a child. As his big brother, please forgive him." "Uncle, don't worry. I'll take good care of Mingli," Fang Yan promised. "You." Zhou Mingli felt that he had nowhere to vent his anger, so he glared at Fang Yan and said, "You lied to me. I won't let you off easy." Saying so, he quickly walked into the room. "Be careful, the road is slippery," Fang Yan reminded him. "Why do you care?" Zhou Mingli's tone was unfriendly. Thud. As soon as he said so, he fell to the ground again. This time, there were no obstacles on his body, so his body slid forward on the thin ice until he reached the bottom of the stairs. Fang Yan raised both hands and said, "I really didn't touch him this time." Fang Minjiang clapped and laughed, saying, "So stupid, he can't even walk properly." Fang Mengxiang was even worse. He ran along the path where Zhou Mingli slipped and said, look at me. I can't even slip." Second Aunt Fang Yiling quickly ran over and pulled Fang Minjiang and Fang Mengxiang to the side, so that Zhou Fan and his little sister wouldn't feel embarrassed. Zhou Fan originally wanted to blame the slippery road for not cleaning up the snow, But after Fang Minjing and Fang Mingxiang's antics, he couldn't bring himself to complain. Even two young children could walk and jump freely. How could his son not be able to walk properly when he's already so old? Moreover, Fang Yin even reminded him to be careful of the slippery road. But he said, "I don't care." Wasn't this a typical dog biting Lu Dongbin? Who's the dog here? This time, Fang Yin didn't need to do anything. Zhou Fan quickly walked over to help Zhou Mingli up and shouted with a stern face, "Zhou Mingli, can you please behave yourself? This isn't a place for you to behave atrociously." Zhou Mingli felt like all the bones in his body were about to fall apart. Although he said he didn't need Fang Yan's help, he was indeed worried about the road under his feet. However, for some reason his knees softened. No, his entire body suddenly lost its strength, and he fell to the ground for no reason. He was a bit scared. He felt pain in his chest just now, so he was worried that he might have some side effects from the fall. Seeing that his father was angry, he didn't dare to say what he wanted to say. He shook off his father's hand and strode into the house. Fang Yijing looked at everyone apologetically and said, "You guys should eat first. I'll go help him settle down. This child is in his rebellious phase, and he always makes people worry." Lu Wan also stood up and said, let's eat. The food is getting cold." Fang Hui was also pushed out. Although the old man's legs were paralyzed, he still had his power. With him present, everyone behaved warmly and harmoniously. The main guest of the dinner tonight was Zhou Fan. Fang Yixing, Fang Hao, and Zhao Qingxin took turns to drink. Zhou Fan took the initiative to toast Fang Hui 3 times. Lu Wan, Fang Yixing, and Zhao Qingxin. He even took a toast from Fang Yan. His mind was not very clear, and when he spoke his tongue began to waver. He squinted at Fang Yan and said, "I heard from your aunt that Fang Yan is a teacher in Huaqing?" Fang Yan nodded and said, "Yes. What's so good about being a teacher?" Zhou Fan waved his hand and said, "The salary is low, the work is heavy, and you have to deal with a group of children every day. When you go to work, you have to eat chalk dust. That's not a good thing, it can damage your lungs. It'll be too late to regret it. Listen to Uncle. Quit your job after the Spring Festival. Go to Mingzhu. Uncle will arrange a job for you, and you'll have a lot of free money." Chapter 396. Fang Yixing was still drinking. Zhao Qingxin was still smiling. Fang Hao was still chewing on the bone in his mouth, and Fang Yisan and Fang Yiling were still chatting casually. Fang Yixing was still drinking. Zhao Qingxin was still smiling. Fang Hao was still chewing on the bone in his mouth, and Fang Yisan and Fang Yiling were still gossiping. But the voices at the table suddenly stopped, and there was a moment of silence. Fang Yixing frowned slightly, and Fang Hui's dark face looked even worse. Fang Hui had very little contact with this son-in-law, but he could feel the pride in his third son-in-law's bones, even from thousands of miles away. He was a very traditional man, but he was quite open-minded when it came to his children's love affairs. "As long as you like it, I'll like it with you." When his daughter brought Zhou Fan to visit for the first time, he behaved well. The young man had delicate features, was gentle and smart. Although he always talked with an air of arrogance, wasn't that what a young man should do? Later, Zhou Fan's position became higher and higher under his father's guidance, and he received more and more compliments, so his self-confidence swelled. He was like this in front of outsiders, and also in front of his own family. This made Fang Hui unhappy. Fang Hui stared at Zhou Fan and said, "I think it's good to be a teacher. Teaching and educating people is a good thing. It's a great thing to cultivate talents for the country. You don't have to worry about Fang Yan's work." Fang Hui put down his chopsticks and said, "You guys eat. I'll go back to my room to rest. I'm getting old and can't sit still anymore." Hearing that their father was going back to his room, Fang Yisan and Fang Yiling quickly got up and pushed the old man to the backyard. Zhou Fan's proposal was opposed by his father-in-law, so he was a little unhappy. He said, "It's not that I want to say that our father is going against him, but the thinking of the older generation has to change. Think about it, what era are we living in? Teaching and educating people is a good thing for the country, but we have to think about our children, don't we? Fang Yin isn't young anymore. How much can a teacher earn in a month? How many years of salary can he buy a house in Huaqing or Yanjing? Without a house, what will Fang Yan do when he gets married? Bring a girl to this village? Once a girl comes and sees how remote this village is, she will run away in fear. What's wrong with this village? Ordinary girls can't even come in. Zhao Qingxin sneered. Chengxin, I didn't say this village is bad. But nowadays, young girls are willing to live in the city. Who can stand the coldness of this village? They feel new living in this village for a few days. But if they live here for a year, they will go crazy. Even if Fang Yan brings her along when he goes to Huaqing to work, he still has to buy a house in Huaqing, right? How do you know that Fang Yan cannot afford to buy a house? Can't a teacher afford a house? Fang Hao retorted. Fang Yan was worried that the three of them would quarrel at the table, so he quickly stepped forward to smooth things over. He raised his cup with a smile and said, Little uncle's words are very reasonable. And you are also thinking of me. Come, let me toast to you three uncles. Yan Yang, and said Fan. Yan Fang Fan I Fang Yan Fang. I Yan Fan I Yan Fang. If you were someone else I wouldn't have to say this. Think about what I said. Our bank will invest over 100 million yuan in Mingzhu to set up a financial service company. If you are interested, I will arrange for you to work in this service company. You will have a better future and income than being a teacher. After a few years, I can get you a house in Mingzhu. Thank you, uncle. I will think about it carefully. Fang Yan nodded with a smile. Zhou Fan was satisfied. He looked at Fang Hao and Zhao Qingxin and said, You can't always stay in this village. This village? How good can it be? Yi Jing also told me that this village used to have a lot of great people. But how many years has it been? Hundreds of years. We can't always hold on to the glory of our ancestors. We have to look forward, right? Zhao Qingxin trembled with anger and deliberately said, We want to go out, but we have to arrange a way for you. Zhou Fan felt the hostility in Zhao Qingxin's words, so he didn't really want to help him. He said, If there is a suitable opportunity, I will arrange it for you. The meal ended on a bad note. Zhou Fan went back to the room he and Fang Yijing lived in. He lay on the bed and said, I think your family is hostile to me. Why is it hostile to you? Fang Yijing was packing her luggage and asked casually. Every time a fortune teller comes, he will fall. I can see that the boy really suffered a loss in the hands of Fang Yan. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so emotional. And your father? When I said I would arrange a job for Fang Yan, he looked at me as if he wanted to eat me. I mean, well, don't I? If it were someone else, I wouldn't have to worry about it. Fang Yijing stopped what she was doing and sat on the bed. She said to her husband gently, Zhou Fan, Swallow Dock is a very special place. The people here are naturally more arrogant than others. Zhou Fan sneered and said, Poor village people, a group of country bumpkins who have never seen the world. What is there to be proud of? Fang Yijing sighed softly. She wanted to talk to her husband about this countless times, but she was always rebuffed by this kind of sarcasm. Yes, Swallow Dock had been silent for 100 years, but the glory and spirit of their ancestors still existed. Moreover, the villagers here had been silently protecting this country and its people with their loyalty and lives. They had bled for this country. They had lost their lives for this country. They had the right to be proud and arrogant. No matter who it was, they should be more tolerant to such a group. They should allow their pride, accept their arrogance, and let them feel that they were being respected. However, her husband only believed what he saw with his eyes. The village he saw was so remote, the houses so old, the village roads so broken, and the young people hiding in the village doing nothing. Even his son, Zhou Mingli, looked down on Swallow Dock. He felt that the village his mother was born in was too poor. She had always wanted to bring her husband and son here, so that they could beat with the pulse of Swallow Dock. Now it seemed that this wish was really hard to achieve. Zhou Fan, you should let go of your prejudices, look with clear eyes, and think with a rational mind. Swallow Dock is really a place that people should be proud of. Before Fang Yijing finished her words, her husband's snoring could be heard. At 6 o'clock in the morning, Fang Yan had already washed up and went to the yard to practice. After returning home, he could not neglect his martial arts. Grandpa did not care about anything else, but he was very strict with this area. Fang Yan had just finished a round of plum blossom steps when Fang Yingying and Fang Haohan also came over in casual clothes. The three greeted each other with their eyes, and then began to practice. After a while, Fang Minjing and Fang Mengxiang also came out. Every new year, eldest aunt and second aunt's family would live in the old house. So Fang Minjing and Fang Mengxiang had to practice with Fang Yan. Fang Hao and Zhao Qingxin also had to practice, but they would practice in the Fang family's martial arts hall, not with the younger generation. Zhou Mingli had also woken up. He wore a thick down jacket and held an iPad in his hand. When he saw Fang Yan leading a group of people to practice, he pouted and began to play games on the iPad. The sound of the game was very loud, and it brought a lot of noise to the people who were practicing. Can you turn off the sound? Fang Mengxiang had the least concentration, and when he heard the sound of fighting in the game, his attention was drawn away. I'm playing my own game. What does it have to do with you? Zhou Mingli naturally would not listen to a child. Do you believe that I will hit you? Fang Mengxiang said angrily. To Fang Mengxiang, Zhou Mingli, who could not even walk steadily, was no match for him. Fang Mengxiang, Fang Yan said to Fang Mengxiang as he practiced, keep your voice low and focus your mind. These noises are your obstacles. Only by overcoming these obstacles can you become a master like your father. Fang Mengxiang admired Fang Yan very much. After hearing Fang Yan's words, he said, I don't want to become a master like my father. I want to become a master like big brother Fang Yan. Okay. Fang Yan smiled and nodded. It felt good to have a hardcore fan at home. Then practice hard. Don't be disturbed by the noise outside. Okay. I will. Fang Mengxiang closed his eyes and focused on practicing his stance. As expected, he was no longer disturbed by external forces. Zhou Mingli sneered and said, you can only fool children. Zhou Fan had drunk too much last night, so he got up late today. After washing up, he did not want to stay with the Fang family, so he got up and took a walk in the village. When he walked to the entrance of the village, he saw a row of cars driving toward the village. There were cars coming to such a remote and rundown village? When he saw the license plate number, his heart could not help but beat faster, and his face was full of disbelief. He rubbed his eyes and looked again. The cars were right, and the license plate number was right. One of the cars' license plate number was the car of his leader's leader. He had seen the leader from afar when he went to Yanjing Hotel to pay a New Year's visit to his immediate superior. Why did he come to this poor and rundown village? Could it be that the leader also came from this village? Thinking of this possibility, Zhou Fan's heart pounded fiercely. Here's my chance. Zhou Fan ran to the village behind the motorcade. He met an old man who was collecting dung. He pointed to the cars and asked, Uncle, which cars belong to which family? Which family? The old man looked up and said, to the Yi family. The third son of the Yi family is back. Chapter 397. The 29th of the 12th month, also known as Little New Year's Eve. Every family held a banquet, people came and went to visit other people, and burning incense outdoors was called heavenly incense. It usually took 3 days. When Fang Yan sat in the living room chatting with his mother and aunt, Yi Fengxing came to find Fang Yan, saying that his third uncle was back, and asked him to go to his house for lunch. Fang Yan glanced at his mother Lu Wan. Lu Wan smiled and said, Fengxing came to invite you, just go. Anyway, your aunt won't be leaving for a while. We'll talk when you come back tonight. Fang Yan nodded and said, I'll be there soon. Yi Fengxing saw that Fang Yan had a guest, so he didn't stay any longer and said, I'll wait for you at home. Go there early, third uncle said. He wants you to help pour wine at noon. There's a guest at home? Third uncle's guest. Yi Fengxing said. Yi Daoling used to be in charge of the research of Huaxia's economic system, so he naturally had to be surrounded by many big shots in the financial system. Now that he was promoted and held an important position, there would naturally be more people crowding around him. Tomorrow was New Year's Eve. No matter how busy Yi Daoling was, he would come back to have a reunion dinner with the Yi family's ancestor. It was reasonable that his subordinates received the news and came to visit Yi Dowling in advance. However, why did he ask him, a junior of the Fong family, to go there? If it was just pouring wine, Yi Fengsheng could do it well. Although his image was worse than him, he was still a descendant of the Yi family, wasn't he? Yi Fengsheng left, but Zhou Fan came back. He looked serious and seemed to have something on his mind. He made an excuse to ask his wife to help find a tie and pulled Fong Yijing to the room. He closed the door and whispered, "Is there a Yi family in Swallow Dock?" "There is a Yi family." Fong Yijing looked at her husband in confusion and said, "Why do you ask?" Zhou Fan was excited. He grabbed his wife's hand and asked, "How is the relationship between your two families? Do you have any contact? Aren't people from the countryside all related to each other? Are you relatives?" "No." Fong Yijing shook her head. The relationship between the Fong and Yi families has never been good, and they're even hostile towards each other. Zhou Fan, what are you trying to say? How did the Yi family provoke you? Fong Yijing was telling the truth. In the past, the relationship between the Yi family and the Fong family was not harmonious. Every year, when Fong Yan and Yi Ro competed, the Yi family and the Fong family always regarded each other as their biggest rivals and often criticized each other. Now that her husband asked about the relationship between the two families, she could only tell him what she knew before. She didn't know that Fong Yan had taken the little princess of the Yi family, Yi Ro, for a walk by the Shihizi River. Zhou Fan could not vent his anger, so he said in a muffled voice, "Your Fong family will be killed by your own stupidity." For such a high-level leader to pay a visit to the Yi family, it proved that the Yi family must have an extraordinary existence. They both resided in Swallow Dock, yet the Fong family actually had a conflict with the Yi family. Wasn't this just seeking death? His wish to use the Fong clan's connections to build a relationship with the Yi clan had been dashed, so he was naturally in a bad mood. "Zhou Fan, how can you say that?" Fong Yijing was angry and yelled. Zhou Fan loved his wife very much. Seeing that Fong Yijing was mad, he did not want to argue with her anymore. He snorted and said, "We will be dragged down by your family sooner or later." "Who will drag you down?" "If you don't want us to drag you down, go home. I know you don't want to come here, and I know you look down on us. If so, don't come here anymore." Fong Yijing was also irritated by her husband's arrogant attitude. She pointed at the door and yelled, "Let's go. Who do you think wants to come here?" Zhou Fan could not suppress his anger anymore and yelled. Hearing the argument in the room, Lu Wan, Fong Yisin, Fong Yiling, and the others who were chatting outside all came in. Lu Wan was the mistress of the family. She asked, "Yijing Zhou Fan, what happened? Why are you arguing?" Fong Yijing did not want to say bad things about her husband in front of her sister-in-law. It would only embarrass her even more. Zhou Fan hated the Fong family, so he did not want to answer Lu Wan's question either. "It's the Spring Festival. What can't we talk about?" Fong Yisin was the eldest sister. She walked over and held her younger sister's hand. She said, "If each of you give way, the conflict will be solved. You finally come back for the Spring Festival. Why are you quarreling? We are a family after all. Don't be a joke to outsiders, right?" Fong Yijing felt bitter, but she could not say anything. Zhou Fan felt very upset, so he went to the yard to smoke. Fong Yan stood next to the plum tree in the yard and heard the argument between Fong Yisin and Zhou Fan clearly. Seeing Zhou Fan coming out, Fong Yan said with a smile, "Uncle, do you really want the Fong family and the Yi family to be on good terms?" Zhou Fan's face froze. He lit the cigarette in his hand and took a puff. He said with a straight face, "Isn't it reasonable for neighbors to be on good terms?" "It is." Fong Yan nodded and said, "So through my efforts, the Fong family and the Yi family are now as close as a family." "Really?" Zhou Fan was overjoyed. If what Fong Yan said was true, then wouldn't it be reasonable for him to visit the Yi family? If he could have a chance to have a meal with that leader. No, just a casual chat to let him have a deeper understanding of himself. Then it would also have a profound promotion and push for his future, wouldn't it? Seeing Zhou Fan's happy expression, Fong Yin reached out and touched the thick and cold branches of the plum tree. He said, "What's that saying again?" A close neighbor is better than a distant relative. I didn't have a clear understanding of this saying before. A distant relative is still a relative. How can a neighbor be better than a relative? Now, I realized that what he said made sense. Some relatives really don't treat their own family members as human beings. Zhou Fan's eyes were slightly cold, but he forcibly suppressed the hostility in his heart. He said with a smile, I chatted with your aunt for a bit. Don't take it to heart. Who hasn't quarreled in a family? Relatives are relatives after all. If I didn't treat you as relatives, would I have taken the initiative to suggest finding a job for you last night? Do you know how many people come to me for help with their work problems every day? Yes. That's why I have to thank you for your kindness, uncle. Fang Yin nodded and said, but I have to be honest. After a night of careful consideration, I still decided to go to Huaqing to be a teacher. Because this is a job I like, and also a job that can give me more insight into life. After becoming a teacher, Fang Yin understood the importance of responsibility. After becoming a teacher, Fang Yin understood the importance of morality and rules. It was only after Fang Yin became a teacher that he realized the preciousness of writing Gaul. Civil officials were not greedy for money, and military generals did not hesitate to die. They would definitely be able to win the respect of all the countries in the world. Even a mere scholar, as long as he had a writing Gaul to protect himself, he would be able to break through the dragon's pool and tiger's den. It was also during his time as a teacher in Huaqing that Fang Yin glimpsed the spirit of writing Gaul from his grandfather Lu Gong. That was why his Tai Chi heart, which had been silent for a long time, trembled and began to spin again. He disregarded life and death, and took the risk to accept the challenge from the Thousand Leaves army, which led to another breakthrough in his Tai Chi heart. Wasn't it because his heart was cleansed and his soul was sublimated? According to Fang Yan's personality in the past, he would definitely turn around and run when he met a top expert, like the Thousand Leaves army. Then he would crawl into the Yi family and never come out again. Fang Yin was grateful for his trip to Huaqing, for Rosefinch High, and for everyone he met on this trip. Of course, Jiang Junling was an exception. It was because of them that his life was so exciting and fulfilling. The Fang family also understood the significance of Rosefinch High to Fang Yin, so no one asked Fang Yin to leave. Even Fang Hui felt that his grandson had gained a lot from this trip. If he could break through the realm again, it would be a great thing for the Fang family. This was also the reason why everyone had a strange expression when Zhou Fan proposed to help Fang Yin find a job last night. Zhou Fan was like a poor millionaire. No matter how hard he tried to show off his wealth, the millionaires in the audience wouldn't give him warm applause. For the men of Swallow Dock, improving their martial arts was the most important thing. Since this is your choice, I will express my understanding and respect. Zhou Fan said with a smile. He didn't care where Fang Yin was going to work, or if he had a job. You said that the Fang family and the Yi family are as close as a family? But just now your aunt said the two families didn't get along very well? Yi Dowling, does uncle know this person? Fang Yin asked with a smile. Zhou Fan's pupils shrank, and his breathing became rapid. Yi Dowling, if he was still unfamiliar with him before, then with his latest transfer order being released through various media, it had attracted the attention of the entire country. It was an extremely rare opportunity to get in touch with a leader like Yi Dowling. He tried hard to control his excitement and said, Yi Dowling is also from Swallow Dock? Yes. Fang Yin nodded with a smile. Just now, his nephew came to me and said that third Uncle Yi asked me to go to their house for lunch. It is said that some guests came to their house, and I have to go pour some wine. Why should I go pour wine for them? I really don't want to go. Zhou Fan opened his mouth. After a long time he said softly, how about I go with you? I have accumulated some experience in pouring wine. That won't do. Fang Yin refused. They didn't invite you. I don't want to invite you either. If I rashly bring you in and make the master unhappy, what about our Fang family? Chapter 398. What will happen to the Fang family if you drag us down? At first glance, this sentence sounded somewhat familiar. He thought about it, and remembered that it was something he said when he was arguing with his wife, Fang Yijing. Of course, what he said was, "We will be dragged down by your family sooner or later." He said it as if it was a matter of course, but it was filled with anger and resentment. Why did it sound so ear-piercing, like he was mocking him? Zhou Fan understood that Fang Yan was taking revenge. He had heard what she had said just now, and then returned the favor. It had to be said that the feeling of stabbing oneself to death, with one's own poison, sword was really unbearable. Zhou Fan's face turned livid. He stared at Fang Yan with anger in his eyes and said, "Fang Yan, what are you talking about? No matter what, I'm still your uncle, your elder. How can you be so disrespectful to your elders? Didn't you say that the villagers of Swallow Dock are very particular about etiquette? Is this what you call etiquette?" Fang Yan laughed and said, "Uncle, are you angry?" Zhou Fan felt like he was stabbed in the chest again. No, it was one slash after another. There was no pause at all. Although it was a simple question, why did it sound so infuriating? "It's right to be angry," Fang Yan said with a smile. "Because when I heard what you said, I was angry too. Uncle, actually, our Swallow Dock is really a reasonable place. Not only do we respect etiquette, but we also respect reason. If others respect us, we will respect them tenfold. This was the etiquette of reciprocity. We will not offend those who do not offend us. But if we are offended, we will return the favor. This is the principle of distinguishing kindness and hatred. You don't talk etiquette to us, and you don't reason with us. Swallow Dock naturally won't show etiquette or reason with you. So you have a reason to humiliate your elder in this way?" Zhou Fan sneered. He had not been humiliated like this for many years. Fang Yan's behavior was equivalent to openly offending him. How is it humiliating? This is the principle that if someone offends me, I will return the favor. This is the first iron rule of our Swallow Dock, that has existed for 1,000 years. I know, I always thought that you looked down on the Fang clan. Your Zhou family is considered the #1 figure in Mingzhu's banking system. What does our Fang family have? A cripple, a drunkard, a bookworm, a woman and a child. Far away in a deserted village, living in an old house. What's so special about you? So year after year, you didn't want to step into the Fang family's door. Sometimes, Auntie came back alone, but you and your son were nowhere to be seen. Auntie never complained about you, nor did she say anything bad about you. She always explained that you were too busy with work and couldn't travel with us. Actually, we're not stupid. We all know what the real situation is. We understand Auntie's difficulties. We didn't want to expose her. We didn't want to embarrass our sister-in-law. On one side were her parents, brother and sister-in-law. On the other side were her husband and son. Both sides were flesh. Which side could she stand on? Sister-in-law says you're very busy, so we'll assume that you're really busy. Auntie says you don't have time to come back, so we comforted her and told her that it's okay. You can come back together next time. Auntie is my auntie, my father's sister, and my grandfather's daughter. We all want her to live a happy life, and we don't want her to suffer any grievances in the Zhou family. We think that if we are more lenient and take care of you, you'll be able to feel our kindness, and you'll treat my auntie better. Obviously, you don't have this kind of awareness. You think leniency is cowardice, and care is flattery. Our Fang family is a piece of chicken ribs to you. It's tasteless to eat, and you'll lose face if you abandon it. You must be feeling very complicated this time, right? Fang Yan, that's just your personal opinion. How I treat your auntie, let her speak for herself. Zhou Fan defended himself. Fang Yan nodded in agreement with Zhou Fan's words. He said, I don't deny that. To be honest, you're really good to auntie. If you weren't good to auntie, our Fang family would have gone to your door to ask for an explanation. Grandfather has entrusted his daughter, whom he has raised for more than 20 years, to you. What right do you have to treat her badly? You've always been worried that our Fang family will drag you down, and you think coming to our Fang family is a waste of time. From the moment your car stopped in front of our Fang family's courtyard, you've been full of hostility, or rather anger. Because of our existence, you had to come with auntie. Uncle, we used to think for auntie's sake, and we thought that everything was fine. But time and time again, you've belittled and insulted us. As a member of the Fang family, I have to stand up and say something. You're an idiot. Fang Yin pointed at his own legs and said, "Can't you see such a thick thigh? And you're always thinking about hugging someone else's thigh. If you're not an idiot, then what are you? I've heard that officials have bright eyes. But are your eyes covered with sh*t? Zhou Fan was amused by Fang Yan's words. He pointed at Fang Yan and said, "Fang Yan, I don't understand. What are you so proud of? Just because your Fang family has a good relationship with the Yi family. Just because the Yi family asked you to help pour wine. Do you think that's what you're relying on? Is this what you're proud of? If that's all, then it's too embarrassing, isn't it?" Fang Yin lowered his voice and said mysteriously, "I'm very rich, I'm not lying to you." Fang Yin waved his hand at Zhou Fan and said, "I'll call you uncle, and you can't let me down." "Goodbye, uncle." Fang Yin waved his hand and left with the wind and snow. Zhou Fan stood where he was, his face as pale as the snow on his feet. He stamped his feet heavily and said with a sneer, "I'd like to see how long you can be arrogant." When Fang Yin arrived at the Yi family's house, Yi Fengxing was playing ice hockey with his cousins at the gate of the yard. The leader's drivers were arranged in the side hall of the yard. They were drinking tea and eating melon seeds, watching the children play with kind smiles on their faces. Seeing Fang Yin coming over, Yi Fengxing threw the ice hockey in his hand to his cousin Yi. He greeted Fang Yin and said, "Lunch is about to start. Third uncle said that you can go in directly when you arrive." Fang Yin looked at Yi Fengxing and asked, "Why didn't third uncle let you go in to pour wine?" Yi Fengxing curled his lips and said, "Third uncle may think that I'm too fat, and it's not nice to occupy 2 seats." Fang Yin naturally knew that it couldn't be the reason. He patted Yi Fengxing's shoulder and comforted him. Maybe it's the sequelae of the Maple Leaf Club. He probably wants to add fuel to the fire. Yi Fengxing put his arm around Fang Yan's shoulder and said, "I don't need you to explain to me. Isn't it the same for either of us to go in? I don't want to go in yet. If I go in, I want to secretly eat fat. A small bite isn't satisfying, and a big bite isn't pleasing. It's better to hide in the kitchen and eat to my heart's content." Fang Yin patted his brother's shoulder and walked towards the Yi family's living room. The Yi family had 2 living rooms. One was used to entertain guests. It was spacious, luxurious, and extraordinary. The other was used by the family for gatherings. Although it was smaller and simpler, it was more warm and cozy. Except for guests, the Yi family rarely used the living room outside. Fang Yin had been to the Yi family countless times and was familiar with the Yi family's buildings. Through the hall was the small courtyard, and across the lawn was the side hall. To the left was the cement path of the main living room, and to the right was the stone path of the Yi family's inner residence. Fang Yin walked up the cement path and stood at the door of the living room and looked in. Yi Dowling was sitting on the main seat, accompanied by an old man. There were also a few middle-aged men about Yi Dowling's age sitting on the left and right sides. They didn't use the 2 rows of yellow rosewood chairs on both sides of the living room. Although it looked formal and dignified, it was easy to pull people apart. They sat on the sofa made of the same rosewood. Although it was a bit crowded, it made their relationship look more intimate and harmonious. As a brilliant politician, it was impossible for Yi Dowling not to understand these details. Seeing Fang Yin appear at the door of the living room, Yi Dowling waved to Fang Yin and said, "Come over, we're waiting for you." Fang Yin walked in front of Yi Dowling and took the initiative to fill the cups in front of everyone. He said with a smile, "Hello leaders, I'm here to serve you." Yi Dowling pointed at Fang Yin and said to his colleagues, "This is the Fang Yin I mentioned to you just now. Although this kid's surname is Fang, I've always treated him as a nephew, very slippery. If it wasn't for his act at the Maple Leaf Club, I wouldn't have gotten this benefit." Everyone sized up Fang Yin while flattering Yi Dowling. The white-haired old man said in a deep voice, "I also heard those rumors that Dowling got lucky. What a joke. This is an appointment from the country. How can it be taken lightly? This kind of person can only gossip behind his back. If he dares to say it to his face, I'll have to talk to him. Minister Yi is everyone's hope. We're sincerely convinced that you're in this position. I also want to get lucky and move my butt forward. But I've been looking forward to it for so many years. But I've never waited for such an opportunity. Ha ha ha." Yi Daoling smiled calmly and looked at Fang Yin and said, "Everyone here is your elder. You have to toast them a few more times in a while. Coming to Swallow Dock as a guest, it's fine if we don't treat them well in other aspects. But we can't not drink good wine. It's the annual vacation now. Don't worry about them making mistakes." Fang Yin nodded in agreement and said, "I'll listen to third uncle." Only then did Fang Yin understand that Yi Daoling pulled him over to support him and introduce some connections. Perhaps he was also worried that his family would vent their hatred on Fang Yin. Chapter 399. Fang Yin forced Mr. Gong to push Yi Daoling behind his back. Whether it was intentional or not, it allowed him to occupy that important position. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that Fang Yin owed Yi Daoling a favor. When Yi Daoling was entertaining his subordinates at home, he let Fang Yin, this junior, pour wine at the table. He also had the intention to help him increase his reputation and network. The Jiang family lost this important city, so they naturally had hatred in their hearts. If they imposed their hatred on Fang Yin alone, Fang Yan's situation would be very dangerous. However, Yi Daoling was now in a high position of power. Even if he couldn't compete with the Jiang family, the Jiang family couldn't do anything to him. He stood up and said that Fang Yin was his nephew. The things that Fang Yin did were all because of him. When these words reached the ears of the people in Yanjing City, they would naturally help Fang Yin share some of the gunfire. Moreover, there was an implicit meaning of protection. The Yi family had always been very good at distinguishing between gratitude and grudges. Sure enough, because of Yi Daoling's strong recommendation, and he had changed the topic to Fang Yin several times, how could the few people present not understand the meaning of this leader? They drank and chatted with Fang Yin. When they were 30% pretending to be drunk, exchanging phone numbers with each other was the proper meaning. After the lunch banquet ended, the guests from afar were all drunk by Fang Yin and Yi Daoling. Their alcohol tolerance was not bad, but compared to Fang Yin and Yi Daoling, this kind of abnormal guy who drank knives like water since childhood, it was not worth mentioning. Their driver played a role at this time, supporting the leader to the parking lot at the entrance of Swallow Dock. The parking lot was actually a rice field used by the villagers to harvest grain during the busy farming season. Now that the grain was collected, there was nothing on the rice field except for a few haystacks. It was wide and flat, a natural parking lot. The drivers all felt strange. The car could obviously drive directly to the Yi family's door. So why did the leader let them get off at that parking lot? Of course, no one would be stupid enough to ask the leader for the reason. It was just that it was more difficult to support the leader now. Fang Yin and Yi Daoling sat back in front of the coffee table and drank tea. Yi Daoling looked at Fang Yin and said, "I only have 2 days of vacation. Today, I will entertain my colleagues at home. Tomorrow, I will have a reunion dinner at home. On the first day of the new year, I will accompany the Prime Minister on a visit. This might be the last time we meet before the new year. We might not have the chance to meet again after the new year. When are you going to Huaqing?" "Probably on the 7th or 8th, Fang Yin said. "I have to make some preparations before the students start school. Originally, I wanted to arrange a new job for you after the new year, or bring you to work by my side. But since you have made your own choice, I can't say much. Since you have chosen to be a teacher, you have to be responsible for your students. Besides, you have gained a lot in Huaqing for half a year. Since the heart of Tai Chi can break through twice, it proves that there will be a third time. Although I don't know much about your Feng Tai Chi, if you can reach the legendary highest state of Tai Chi, the water overflow state, you will be the pride of our entire Swallow Dock." Yi Daoling looked like he was gossiping. Just as he said, he was indeed talking to Fang Yin with the tone and attitude of an elder. Fang Yin nodded with a smile and said, "I will work hard. When I am with my students, I feel very calm and my body feels very free. I think this is also the reason why my heart of Tai Chi can break through. So, I will continue to be a teacher. I am not considering changing professions for the time being. As for whether the heart of Tai Chi can reach the water overflow state, let nature take its course. This kind of thing can't be forced. The heart of Tai Chi won't have the word forced. Of course, I am also looking forward to such a day. Yi Daoling nodded and said, write down Donghai's phone number. If there is anything, you can call him directly. I often have meetings, so my time is not as free as Donghai. If there is a problem that I can't solve, I will ask Uncle Donghai for help. Fang Yin said with a smile. If someone threw an olive branch, he would naturally accept it with both hands. Yi Daoling put down the teacup in his hand and said, I am going to read a document, so I won't sit with you. You young people find your own fun. Fang Yin got up and sent Yi Daoling off. Yi Fengsheng ran over and asked, third uncle left? Yes, Fang Yin said. Did you speak up for me? Let him let me out after the new year? No, Fang Yin said. Why not? Because I think he will definitely not agree. The Yi family hopes that you can focus on martial arts, so they naturally don't want you to go out and be distracted by other things. Fang Yin said. After a pause, he whispered to Yi Fengsheng, if you really want to go out, then go out. Yi Fengsheng stared at Fang Yin with wide eyes and said, you want me to run away like you? We are not running away, we are just going out to find inspiration. Fang Yin said, look, I went out and broke through the heart of Tai Chi. Maybe if you go out, your white tiger fist can also enter the upper stage of Peri-Celestial. It is also possible to directly become a tiger. Yi Fengsheng nodded and said, let's go, I will take you to a place. To where? You will know when you come. Yi Fengsheng said. Fang Yin looked at him warily and said, you will not harm me, right? How is that possible? You are my brother. I will harm anyone but you, Yi Fengsheng said angrily. Thus, Fang Yin was hugged by Yi Fengsheng's fat arm and walked towards the backyard of the Yi family. When they reached the entrance of the bamboo garden, Yi Fengsheng suddenly held his stomach and said, my stomach is not feeling well. I need to go to the toilet. You go to the bamboo pavilion. My sister wants to talk to you. Before Fang Yin could object, Yi Fengsheng had already turned around and ran away. Do you think I am an idiot? Fang Yin sneered. Why would Yi Ro talk to me? It must be a trap. Fang Yin didn't go to the bamboo pavilion. He turned around and left. Fang Yin had just gotten home and was about to rest when his phone rang in his pocket. It was a message from Yi Fengsheng. How dare you stand my sister up? Fang Yin jumped out of his bed in shock. Is Yi Ro really looking for me? That bastard Yi Fengsheng. Why is he not lying all of a sudden? Zhou Fan was in a bad mood. He wanted to drive back to Yanjing immediately and buy a ticket to Mingzhu to spend the Spring Festival with his parents and family. But if he left now, he would lose face and his relationship with his wife would worsen. He hated Fang Yin and the Fang family to the core. Since he didn't want to stay with the Fang family, he wandered around the village by himself. He had to admit that the winter in the north was really charming. Although Swallow Dock was in a remote location, the scenery was quite good. Both the ice river in Shihizi and the ice mountain in Little Green Mountain were beautiful. Zhou Fan walked along the shore of Shihizi and planned to go to the foot of Little Green Mountain to have a closer look. He walked farther and farther, and his figure became more and more faint. Whoosh! He heard the sound of snow being stepped on behind him. He turned around, but there was no one behind him. When he turned around, he saw a man in a black robe and a hood standing in front of him. Ah! Zhou Fan was taken aback, and he stepped back. When he regained his balance, he asked anxiously, who are you? What do you want? Are you Fang Yin? Fang Yin, I'm warning you, don't play this kind of trick with me. He had received a high level of education, so he naturally didn't believe in ghosts. But this man appeared out of nowhere and was dressed in such a 2D style. This made him wonder if Fang Yin was deliberately trying to scare him. After all, in his impression, Fang Yin could do anything. Whoosh! The man took a step forward. With just one step, he was already in front of Zhou Fan. Then, he stretched out his hand and grabbed Zhou Fan's neck. During this process, Zhou Fan didn't have any intention of dodging or resisting. Perhaps it was too late. The black-robed man exerted a bit of force and lifted Zhou Fan's body into the air. Zhou Fan's feet were off the ground, and he couldn't breathe properly. His face quickly turned purple. His throat was moaning, and he wanted to say something, but no words came out. The black-robed man raised a white transparent bottle in front of Zhou Fan and said with an extremely hoarse and strange voice, "When we have reunion dinner, pour this into the Fong family's soup pot. I believe you can do it." Zhou Fan's eyes widened. It was unknown whether it was because he was surprised to receive such a strange task, or because his body was suffering from lack of oxygen. "Of course you can also resist or run away. It doesn't matter." As the black-robed man spoke, the hand that was strangling Zhou Fan's throat twisted slightly, and Zhou Fan's mouth opened wide. The black-robed man flicked his finger, and a black pill was shot into Zhou Fan's mouth. Zhou Fan only smelled a fishy smell, and then the pill dissolved in his mouth, flowed into his throat and stomach, and could no longer be found. "You can only get the antidote after completing the task," the black-robed man said in a muffled voice. "Either they die or you die." Plop. Zhou Fan's body fell to the ground. He covered his neck and gasped for fresh air. If he had been strangled for 1 or 2 more seconds, he felt that he would have died. When he finally recovered, he raised his head to look for the black-robed man, but found that he had already disappeared. The river bank and the mountain ridge were gone, as if they had never been there. More strangely, he found that the black-robed man didn't even leave footprints. There was only a trail of footprints on the snow. Zhou Fan's body tensed up and his hair stood on end. He was extremely frightened. Did he meet the legendary snow ghost today? However, he looked at the white glass bottle in his hand. Why would the snow ghost want to poison the Fong family? Poison? In a panic, he threw the glass bottle far away. Chapter 400. Zhou Fan vomited until his heart and lungs were torn apart. Again and again, he stuck his fingers into his mouth and dug, then lay on the ground and vomited. He vomited his lunch, his bile, and even his internal organs. But he was still not sure whether he had succeeded or not. He was very sure that the black-robed man put poison in his mouth. If he could not complete the task, he might die from the poison, because there was no antidote. However, if he completed the task, then, would anyone from the Fong family be alive? He did not want to die, nor did he want the Fong family to die. Yes, he hated the Fong family, and he hated Fong Yen, but it was not to the point where he could not live or die. He wanted to spit out the pill, and he wanted to pretend that nothing had happened. However, no matter how hard he tried, he knew better than anyone else that he was actually doing useless things. He lay down in the snow powerlessly, letting the cold wind blow on his cheeks, letting the scattered snow cover his body. He opened his eyes and looked at the vast sky. At this moment, the sky was just like his current mood. He was a little regretful. Why did he come here to see the little green mountain? Wasn't it enough to see it from afar? He began to hate again. He hated Fong Yen, hated the Fong family. If it were not for Fong Yen, if it were not for the Fong family, how could he have encountered such a thing? How could he be forced to take poison? Even his own wife was the same. That hateful woman. Why did she force him and his father to come to this damned place to celebrate the spring festival? He still hoped that this was not true, that the black-robed man was Fong Yen, or his friends in disguise, and they were just punishing him for belittling them. This was actually a realistic farce. He lay in the snow for a long time, until the phone in his pocket rang. Only then did he come back to his senses. He got up from the snow, took out his phone, glanced at the caller ID, then hung up and turned off the phone. He did not want to talk now. Either they die or you die. The black-robed man threatened him with a hoarse voice. This was really a dilemma. He did not want to die. He could not die, he must live. However, was this the reason for wanting the Fong family to die? He searched around, and finally found the transparent glass bottle in the snow. As long as he poured the drop of liquid in the bottle into the soup, he would complete the task and receive the reward of survival. He put the glass bottle into the hidden pocket of his windbreaker, patted off the snow on his body, and walked home as if nothing had happened. When Zhou Fan returned to the Fong family, Fong Yijing was already waiting for him at the entrance of the courtyard. Fong Yijing looked at Zhou Fan and said, "Zhou Fan, let's talk." After saying that, he turned and walked towards the room. Zhou Fan followed behind Fong Yijing. After they entered the room, Fong Yijing closed the door. Fang Yijing looked at her expressionless husband and sighed softly. Zhou Fan, I know you don't want to come here. I know you don't like my family. Even numerology says that you're not happy here. Tomorrow was Chinese New Year's Eve. It was not appropriate to go back at this time. After the reunion dinner tomorrow night, you can go back first with numerology. I rarely go home, so I'll be staying at home for a while. My dad's health isn't good, and I haven't been by his side for many years. This time, I have to stay by his side no matter what to do as a filial son. Zhou Fan held his wife's hand and said, Why wouldn't I want to come? I won't come if I don't want to. It's not that I don't like you. It's just that there's some misunderstanding. I'll stay and have reunion dinner with you. If there's nothing else after Chinese New Year, I'll stay with you for a few days. Your family is my family. Zhou Fan. Fang Yijing looked at her husband in shock. How did he change so much in such a short time? He didn't answer her call, and even turned off his phone. Wasn't it because he was unhappy with her and her family? Zhou Fan grinned and said, I figured out a lot of things just now. I do have a problem with my body. I'll talk to them. Zhou Fan, thank you. Fang Yijing held her husband's hand tightly and said gratefully. They ate dumplings on Chinese New Year's Eve, according to the old rules of Swallow Fort. Although dumplings weren't the main dish for reunion dinner, it was an essential reunion dinner. Fish, meat, seafood, and wild vegetables were the main dishes. After eating and drinking, they would eat a few steaming dumplings. Oil would be left at the corners of their mouths, and their lips would smell fragrant. That beautiful feeling of happiness could last from the old year to the new year. On the afternoon of Chinese New Year's Eve, Fang Yin didn't go out. He stayed at home with his mother and 3 aunts to make dumplings. His mother, Lu Wan, took out 2 pieces of white jade from her purse. After washing them with clean water, she solemnly put them into the dumpling bag and said, These are auspicious dumplings. Whoever eats them will be the luckiest person. Fang Minjing's face was full of joy. She said crisply, I'll definitely eat them. Eldest aunt Fang Yisan took a look at the white jade and joked, You're really generous. Zhou Mingli was sitting on the sofa playing games. When he saw his aunt put the white jade into the dumpling bag, he said in disgust, Disgusting. I hope I didn't eat them. Fang Yin raised his eyebrows and was about to get angry. Lu Wan gave him a look to tell him not to cause trouble. Fang Yin didn't want to make his mother angry on Chinese New Year's Eve. He washed the flour on his hands and said to Zhou Mingli, Mingli, didn't you want to see me split the brick with one hand? Let's go. I'll show you. Zhou Mingli looked at Fang Yin in confusion and said, You're not lying, are you? How can I lie about this? Fang Yin asked with a smile. Are you worried that the brick is fake, or that the hand is fake? Zhou Mingli thought for a while and exited the game. He said, I'd like to see if you're bluffing. Fang Yijing looked at Zhou Mingli, who followed Fang Yin out. She said worriedly, Will Mingli be okay? Lu Wan looked at her and said, Don't worry. Fang Yin knows what he's doing. Fang Yisan looked at his sister and said, Yijing, you should also persuade them to come back happily and have a happy New Year's Eve. Isn't that great? Fang Yijing smiled softly and said, We talked yesterday. Zhou Fan said he thought through a lot of things. He said there's a misunderstanding, and he'll get along well with everyone. Fang Yisan nodded and said, That's more like it. He's also the son-in-law of the Fang family. Otherwise, how could he have the chance to come to Swallow Dock to eat and drink? Fang Yijing smiled and didn't answer. People in Swallow Dock were born proud. But people outside thought that Swallow Dock had nothing to be proud of. The contradiction was too big. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't solve it. Some things couldn't be said too directly. If she told her husband that Swallow Dock was actually Huaxia's guardian, Zhou Fan would definitely suspect that she had some mental illness. In the era of technology, who would believe that a group of people like that existed? Fang Yin took Zhou Mingli to the bank of Shihizi and picked up an intact blue brick in the corner of the backyard of the Li family. He handed the brick that still had ice on it to Zhou Mingli and said, You lift this brick, I'll break it. How do I lift it? Zhou Mingli didn't care about getting his hands dirty. He grabbed the blue brick and asked. Raise both hands, Fang Yin said. Hold one corner with each hand. Zhou Mingli lifted the blue brick above his head according to Fang Yan's instructions and asked, "Like this?" "Like this," Fang Yan said. "Lift it up." Fang Yan told him, and started pretending to control his qi. His mouth was tightly shut, and his cheeks were puffed up like a frog that was filled with air. "Open!" Fang Yan slapped at the blue brick. Zhou Mingli's body took a few steps back, but the blue brick was intact. There wasn't even a crack, let alone being split in half. Zhou Mingli straightened his body and looked at Fang Yan with disdain. He said, "Can you do it or not? If you can't, I'll go back. Who wants to see you show off here?" "Try again," Fang Yan said embarrassedly. "The angle just now was wrong. You lift the blue brick, and I'll split it again. I can do it this time." Zhou Mingli thought about it, and felt that it didn't matter since it was already here. So he lifted the blue brick again. Fang Yan suddenly exerted force, and slashed at the center of the blue brick like lightning. Crack! Zhou Mingli only felt his arms shake, and the blue brick in his hand was split into two. He looked at Fang Yan in disbelief and asked, "Is it really possible? There's something more exciting. Do you want to see it?" Fang Yan said with a smile, his voice full of temptation. "What else?" Fang Yan pointed at a crooked tree next to him and said, "You climb up this tree and throw the brick down. When the brick falls, I'll cut it in half. When the brick hits the ground, you'll find that the brick will split into two." "Impossible?" Zhou Mingli's curiosity was piqued. "Do you think this is a movie? Try it if you don't believe me." Zhou Mingli looked at the crooked tree and said, "This tree is icy and slippery. I'm afraid I can't climb it." "Then forget it," Fang Yan said. "When you come next spring, I'll show it to you." Zhou Mingli hesitated again and again, but he still didn't want to give up. He said to Fang Yan, "I'll try climbing. Help me." "Sure." Fang Yan reluctantly agreed. With Fang Yan's help, Zhou Mingli finally climbed up the crooked tree with great effort. Zhou Mingli hugged the tree trunk and shouted to Fang Yan, "Pass me the brick." "Brick? What brick?" Fang Yan looked at Zhou Mingli with a confused expression. "Didn't you say I'll climb up and throw the brick, and you'll split it?" Zhou Mingli had a bad feeling. "Oh, that's what happened," Fang Yan said. "But I just thought about it. I think I'm not strong enough yet. I'll go back and practice. When I'm done, I'll come back and split the brick for you. Don't worry. By next spring, I'll definitely be able to split the brick in the air." After Fang Yan said that, he turned around and walked towards the village. "Hey Fang Yan!" Zhou Mingli was scared. He hugged the crooked tree and shouted, "Put me down, Fang Yan, you bastard. Put me down. Fang Yan, you bastard. You dare to trick me. I'll play you to death." "Fang Yan, cousin, help." Deep in the forest, a man in black robe watched this scene like a ghost. Chapter 401. Come back quickly, I can't handle it alone. The tree trunk was too tall, the bark was too slippery, and it was covered with a thin layer of ice. If he wasn't careful, he might slip and fall to the ground. Zhou numerology relied on Fang Yan's help to climb up. Now that Fang Yan said that he had to go back to practice again, it was possible that he could only come back next spring to perform the act of splitting bricks in the air. If he lay here and waited until next spring, before the tree sprouted, it would probably sprout on his head. Of course, he also knew that it was going to be New Year's Eve dinner soon. If his family couldn't see him, they would definitely come out to look for him. His life wouldn't be in any danger. However, the wind and snow were strong in the forest beside Stone River. Not to mention 1 or 2 hours, even 10 or 20 minutes would be a torture. He really hated Fang Yan to the core. Why hadn't he been beaten to death by his parents when he was young? This naughty kid who specialized in destroying things and scheming against others. "Fang Yan, come back. Help, someone help me." Zhou Mingli screamed himself hoarse, but no one could hear his helpless pleas. In the depths of the forest, a pair of gray eyes stared at him without blinking. The black robe was wrapped tightly around his body. Even the arrogant cold wind couldn't remove it from his body. He held a thin blade in his hand. As long as he gently tossed it out, the screaming child would most likely die. After a long time, he finally made his final decision. He turned around and sprinted towards the top of the small green mountain, gone in a flash. When Zhou Mingli came back, his face was swollen, his nose was covered in tears and mucus, and he couldn't stop coughing. His hair, which was originally made with hair clay, was blown into a chicken's nest shape. The four sides were swollen, and the middle was bald. It could be the new trend of swallow fort. Zhou Mingli couldn't hold it in anymore when he saw Fang Yijing. He cried out, "Where's Fang Yan? Where's Fang Yan? That bastard, he purposely tricked me. He tricked me to the tree and ran away. I couldn't get down alone. I almost fell to my death." Fang Yijing knew that Fang Yan would punish her son. It was not Fang Yan's style to do nothing, but when he saw Zhou Mingli's miserable state, he felt a little distressed. He quickly pulled Zhou Mingli into the room and said, "Why are you shouting? Quickly go back and change your clothes. My God, my clothes are about to turn into popsicles. It's Fang Yan, this bastard son of a bitch. I'm going to fight him to the death. He dared to bully me. I'm not going to let him off easy." "Pa!" Zhou Fan slapped his son on the head. "Shut up." Zhou Fan snapped. "Who told you to talk to your cousin like this? You have no respect for your elders. Is this what we taught you?" His father's anger was still a deterrent. Seeing that Zhou Fan was angry, Zhou Mingli didn't dare to make a scene again. He wiped his tears and said, "So we'll just let it go? I was bullied by him for nothing? Why should he?" "Because he is your elder brother," Zhou Fan said with a tough attitude. "If you talk to your elder brother like this again, I'll teach you a lesson even if he doesn't do anything." "You." Zhou Mingli wanted to rush up and fight with his father. He felt that everyone was bullying him. Even his father had betrayed him and joined the enemy's side. "As his mother, you need to discipline him," Zhou Fan said to Fang Yijing. Hearing the commotion, everyone in the Fang family turned their gazes over. Lu Wan came out and advised, "Talk to the child, don't touch him." Fang Minjing giggled and said, "Big brother Fang Yan has been beaten a lot." "You little girl." Lu Wan was amused by Fang Minjing's words. She grabbed the two braids on her head and said, "If you dare to talk to adults again, I'll sew your mouth shut with a needle." Fang Minjing quickly covered her mouth with her hand, worried that her aunt would really sew her mouth shut with a needle. If that happened, she wouldn't be able to eat delicious food. Only a stick can make a filial son. Children should be strictly disciplined. If they are like this now, what will happen in the future? Zhou Fan said. While everyone was comforting Zhou Mingli, Zhou Fan left the room and went to the kitchen. It was Lunar New Year's Eve. The two old maids of the Fang family were busy preparing dinner for the family. Seeing Zhou Fan come in, the old maid who was washing the vegetables asked with a smile, "Young master, why are you in the kitchen?" "I'm here to find something to eat," Zhou Fan said with a smile. "I ate quite a lot in the afternoon. I didn't expect to be hungry at this hour." "It's easy to boil oil in a cold place," the old maid said. "There's fried rice balls and braised pig's face meat. Should I make a bowl of rice balls and cut a plate of pig's face meat for you to fill your stomach?" "Sure," Zhou Fan said with a smile. "Cut a plate of pig's face meat." The old maid wiped her hands on her apron, then took a pig's ear from the pot and cut it into strips. Zhou Fan stood next to the old maid and pretended to watch her cut the meat. But when the old maid's body blocked the other old maid's view, he quickly unscrewed the white bottle of potion in his hand and poured it into the soup pot. There was only one drop of the potion, and it didn't even make a splash when it was poured into the soup pot. The old maid looked at Zhou Fan looking at the soup pot and said with a smile, "This is mountain mushroom pheasant soup. The mushrooms are picked from the mountains, and the pheasant is hunted from the mountains. You city people can't eat it." "Yes, people in the city eat expensive and nutritious food," Zhou Fan said with a smile. "There's also gutter oil. Drink a bowl later to replenish your vitality," the old maid said. She deftly put the pig's ear on a plate, then handed a pair of chopsticks to Zhou Fan and said, "Young master, eat this first." "Thank you." Zhou Fan took the plate and said gratefully. When Fang Yan came back from outside, Zhou Mingli was already sitting on the living room sofa playing games. When he saw Fang Yan come in, His eyes almost shot out thousands of sharp little swords to stab Fang Yin into pieces. Fang Yin sat next to Zhou Mingli and asked with concern, "Cousin, you're back? Did you catch a cold?" "Fang Yin, don't be mean to me. I'll be even more mean if you're mean to me." Fang Yin interrupted him and said with a low voice, "You've seen it. I can break a brick with my bare hands. If I cut your spine with a knife, do you think you can still stand up? Don't you dare. Do you want to try?" Fang Yin said with a smile, "I have inner force. If I hit you, you won't feel it on the spot, but after a month, the side effects will slowly show." Zhou Mingli felt a chill on his back. He jumped down from the sofa, put on his shoes and ran to his room. He was really scared of Fang Yin. Fang Yin smiled silently. This pair of father and son was really worrisome. After the Fang family worshipped their ancestors, they poured 3 glasses of wine in the direction of the stone tablet at the entrance of Swallow Dock village. Fang Yin personally went to the backyard to bring a few dishes to the old drunkard and drank 2 glasses with him. The Fang family's New Year's Eve dinner also officially began. Fang Hui sat at the head of the table, Fang Yixing sat below, and then Fang Hao, Zhao Qingxin, Zhou Fan, Fang Yan, Zhou Mingli, and several other juniors of the Fang family sat below. Lu Wan and the other women sat on the other side of Fang Hui, according to seniority. Fang Hui looked at his descendants sitting on both sides of the table. He seemed to be in a particularly happy mood, and said with a smile, "New Year's Eve is the night of reunion. How can it be called a night of reunion when all the family members are not here? This year, Yixing and Zhou Fan are back, and so is Zhou Mingli. This year's reunion dinner is even more reunion than in previous years. But this is not enough." Everyone looked at Fang Hui with confusion. Obviously all the family members were here. Why did the old man say it was not enough? Could it be that someone who was supposed to be here didn't come back? Fang Hui looked at Fang Yin with bright eyes, and jokingly said, "If Fang Yin can bring back that girl from the Yi family, then our dinner will be truly perfect." Everyone laughed. Fang Yin smiled bitterly and said, "Grandpa, please don't make fun of us. Who said I'm joking with you? Next year, we must win that girl from the Yi family and bring her back to our Fang family for a reunion dinner during Chinese New Year. This is a mission. We must make sure it is completed." Fang Hui said with a serious expression. Fang Yin didn't want to spoil his grandpa's mood, so he half-heartedly said, "I'll try my best. But you also know, this kind of thing requires fate." "Fate my ass. Back then, I fell in love with your grandmother, and so did many other people. They wrote love poems and gave her gifts, so I directly went up to her and told her to come with me. Then she left with me," Fang Hui said with a proud expression. Fang Yan's face was full of shock, saying, "It's that simple?" He didn't quite believe it. He always felt that picking up girls was something that required a lot of experience. How could it be so easy to succeed? "It's that simple," Fang Hui solemnly nodded. "Of course. That's only if I beat all of her suitors away in front of her." Everyone laughed again. Even Zhou Mingli, who always kept a straight face and didn't want to talk to anyone, couldn't help but laugh. It seems like Fang Hui's story was very much to the taste of these young people. After Fang Hui finished his speech, everyone's eyes turned to Fang Yixing. According to the rules, he would also say a few words. Fang Yixing raised the glass in front of him and smiled. "I won't say much. I just wish everyone good health and a better life. Come, let's have a toast." Cheers. Everyone's glasses clanked together, making a clear sound. Then, everyone raised their necks and drank all the liquor in their glasses. Even Fang Mengxiang learned from the adults and drank all the yogurt in his glass in one gulp. The first thing to eat was the soup. The old maid brought up the bowls of soup. Everyone had a bowl in front of them. Fang Hui took the bowl, blew on it, and was about to drink the soup with a spoon, when Zhou Fan suddenly called out, "Wait a minute." Chapter 402. Zhou Fan suddenly spoke. Everyone put down their bowls of soup and looked at him with puzzled eyes. On such an occasion, drinking soup while others were talking was indeed a very impolite behavior. The Fang family was very polite. Zhou Fan's face was slightly red, and his forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat due to nervousness. Of course, it could also be because of the smoke from the soup pot in front of him. His legs, which were placed under the table, were trembling slightly. His stomach secreted a large amount of saliva, and then he quietly swallowed it, mouthful by mouthful. He was a little evasive, not daring to look at anyone's eyes. But he soon realized that this kind of evasive behavior was actually a kind of guilty conscience. So he quickly raised his head. Feng Hui looked at Zhou Fan with a smile and said, "Don't be nervous. We're all family, so what can't we say? Children's words carry no harm. In front of me, you're all a group of children. Even if you scold an old man like me tonight, I won't get angry with you. At most, I'll be taught a lesson by my disciples, and be done with it. Do you think I'll become enemies?" Zhou Fan smiled awkwardly, looked at Feng Hui and said, "I have a few words to say. I want to toast you first, Dad." Everyone laughed. Feng Yixing looked at Zhou Fan and said, "I thought it was something serious. If you want to toast, we won't stop you. But I've already told the old man during dinner that he can only drink 3 glasses tonight. After 3 glasses, he's not allowed to drink anymore. He's already clinked glasses with everyone. So if you want to toast him, this will be the 2nd glass. But I can't guarantee whether the old man will drink it or not." Zhou Fan raised the glass in front of him, looked at Feng Hui and said, "Dad, I want to apologize to you. All these years I've done a lot of bad things. You handed Yen to me, but I've always let her suffer. Especially in recent years, because I've made some small achievements at work. I feel that I'm unbeatable and look down on everyone. The last few times Yen came back to see you, I pushed her away with the reason that I'm busy with work. I'm really busy with work. But if I really want to take a leave, I can find time to come. I just think, do you think our Feng family is too poor and Swallow Dock is too remote?" Feng Hui asked directly. Zhou Fan felt even more ashamed and said, "Yes. I always felt that Swallow Dock was too remote, and the people here always had a straight back, and they walked with vigor, as if they were more powerful than anyone else. I feel very uncomfortable in my heart." Zhou Fan gulped down the wine in his cup and said, "I know I was wrong. No matter how remote Swallow Dock was, it was still the hometown of Yijing. No matter what, the Feng clan is still my family. I shouldn't have come here with an attitude of showing off and pride. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been hit on the head again and again." Feng Hui touched his big bald head, looked at the juniors present and asked, "Do you think I should drink Zhou Fan's toast?" "We should drink." Feng Minjing and Feng Mingxiang shouted. Children loved to join in on the fun. "You should drink," Feng Yixing said. "Dad, give Zhou Fan a chance." Feng Yijing said with red eyes. Since he made it clear, it means he's sincerely apologizing. Feng Hui nodded, then tilted his head back and gulped down the wine in his cup. Feng Hui put down the empty cup and said to Zhou Fan, "I've been waiting for this cup of wine for too many years." "Dad, I'm sorry." Zhou Fan's eyes were red. "I've let you down." "Indeed," Feng Hui said with a smile. "Now that you're able to say these words and toast me, it proves that Feng Yijing didn't choose the wrong person. And I, Feng Hui, wasn't blind to marry my daughter to you." Zhou Fan poured himself another cup of wine, then looked at Feng Yan and said, "Feng Yan, I want to toast you with this cup of wine." Feng Yan smiled and said, "Regardless of age or seniority, it's not my turn, right?" "Feng Yan, I must toast you with this cup of wine," Zhou Fan said with a firm tone. "There's been some conflict between us, and I know you've always been very dissatisfied with me as your uncle." Feng Yan nodded seriously and said, "Sometimes I've thought about not being your uncle. You know a lot of things in your heart. But for the sake of your aunt and the harmony of the family, you pretend that nothing happened. This time I also came with hostility. I didn't want to come at first, but Yijing insisted. In order to go back to her hometown for the spring festival this year, she insisted with me for more than half a year. Thank you for tolerating me, thank you for accepting me. Feng Yan, let bygones be bygones. I'll toast you with this cup of wine." Zhou Fan's tone was sincere, and his eyes were sincere. Moreover, he was Feng Yan's elder. Since an elder took the initiative to apologize to a younger person, Fang Yin couldn't pretend to be cold no matter what. He picked up the cup in front of him and clinked it with Zhou Fan, then said with a smile, "Uncle, you're too serious. I've always had hope in you. I think you can still be saved." Lu Wan scolded, "Fang Yin, how can you talk to your uncle like that?" Fang Yin and Zhou Fan drank up the white wine in their cups at the same time, and Zhou Fan poured himself a third cup of wine. Fang Hui looked at Zhou Fan and said, "If there's anything good, you should say it slowly. If there's any good wine, you should drink it slowly. You said all the good words in one breath and drank all the good wine. Do you still want to talk? Do you still want to drink? Put the cup down and drink some soup to moisten your intestines first." Fang Yijing also persuaded him and said, "Old Zhou, take a rest first. Everyone understands your intention. Why are you in such a hurry?" Zhou Mingli came over to take the wine cup from his father's hand and said, "Dad, who do you want to toast this cup of wine to? I'll drink it for you." Zhou Fan pushed Zhou Mingli away and said with red eyes, "This cup of wine, I toast everyone, to everyone here. I'll drink it first." After that, Zhou Fan drank up the white wine in the cup, put the cup on the table, picked up the meat soup in front of him, and said, "This soup smells so good." The others looked at each other, and also picked up the meat soup in front of them, and drank it in small mouthfuls. After Zhou Fan's confession of love, the temperature of the soup dropped a little, and it tasted just right. Crack. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Zhou Fan ran in the snow in a crooked manner and slipped on the hard ice several times. His body fell into the snow pit, and his body was still sliding forward along the smooth ice and snow. Before his body stopped, he had tried hard to get up and run forward again. Every step he took seemed to exhaust all his strength. Running from the Fang clan to here had already exhausted his stamina. His breathing was ragged, and his chest felt like it was being crushed by a huge rock. Every time his heart beat, he felt a dull pain. He hadn't exercised for a long time. The night was dark and windy, and it was freezing cold. There was no bright moon in the sky, not even a star. Fortunately, there was a layer of snow on the ground, which could light the way. Zhou Fan's glasses had fallen off, and the scene in front of him was a blur. He relied on his feelings and memories to run here. This was the place where he met the black-robed man. "Come out, come out." Zhou Fan stood in the snow and shouted, "I've completed the mission, I've completed the mission." No one answered. Apart from startling a few forest birds, which bounced off a few icicles, the icicles fell to the ground and broke into pieces. No human sounds could be heard. "I've completed the mission. Give me the antidote. Give me the antidote." Whoosh, a black-robed man appeared behind Zhou Fan. "Are you sure you've completed the mission?" The black-robed man's extremely strange voice sounded. This was the most unpleasant voice Zhou Fan had ever heard. It was like talking with a mouth full of sand, or like the sound made by countless earthworms digging holes in the fertile soil. "Yes, I've completed the mission. I've completed the mission. I poured the poison into the soup, and they all drank the soup. Everyone drank a bowl," Zhou Fan shouted with a trembling voice. His upper and lower teeth were chattering violently. It was as if he was afraid of what he had just done, or as if he was naturally afraid of the black-robed man in front of him. "Is that so?" The black-robed man sneered. "Then tell me, what are the symptoms of the people who drank the soup now?" He would not believe anything Zhou Fan said. Even if this man's life was in his hands, even if he could crush him to death at any time, it was like crushing a weak ant to death. Zhou Fan calmed down a little, and his speech became more logical. He said, "There are no symptoms. I saw them run out with the excuse of going to the toilet after drinking the soup. They have no symptoms. They are all fine, not dead." The black-robed man's voice sounded as if it came from hell. He said, "Of course they won't die. At least they won't die now. Because I gave you the soulless lure. It's a slow-acting poison. It will fuse with the blood, destroy the human body's hematopoietic function, corrode people's spiritual will, and slowly turn normal people into waste. Finally, after 3 months, they will die as if they have a chronic disease." This was Swallow Fort. How could they casually kill an entire family? However, if it was this kind of silent death, By the time they knew the truth, it would already be 3 months later. At that time, who could find traces of them being poisoned? Time was the best accomplice, and it could cover up the key evidence left by the murderer. It's fine if it's an ordinary person, but for those who practice martial arts, the more profound their inner strength is, the more painful it is when they die. The black-robed man looked at Zhou Fan and said, "Fortunately, the Fong family are all martial arts practitioners." Chapter 403. Without spirit, one would lack strength. Without energy, there was no divine light. Spirit, chi, and spirit were indispensable to martial artists. The three depended on each other and promoted each other. Zhou Fan didn't know kung fu, nor did he know anything about inner force. However, he could tell from the name that the soulless attraction was obviously meant to attract people's souls. If a person lost his soul, it was equivalent to losing his essence, chi, and spirit. What was the difference between him and a useless person? The worst thing was that this thing fused with the blood and destroyed the human body's hematopoietic function. Without the ability to produce blood, how long could one live? Zhou Fan didn't have time to study this. He stretched out his hand and said, "I'll listen to you. I've completed the task. Give me the antidote, quickly give me the antidote. I feel like I'm going to die, I'm going to die." The pill that the black-robed man fed him was equivalent to a ticking time bomb. It could detonate in his body at any time and take his life away. The threat of death in the next second was too torturous. If he didn't have more important things to do, he would have collapsed a long time ago. He needed the antidote. He needed to get rid of the poison in his body and defuse the bomb. That way, he would have a slight sense of security. This was also the biggest motivation for him to persevere. He didn't want to die. After a moment of silence, the black-robed man asked, "Your wife and children, did they drink that bowl of soup?" Zhou Fan's body trembled violently as he looked at the black-robed man in horror. This was a rather sensitive and difficult question to answer. If he said that he drank it, then the black-robed man would be suspicious. What kind of person would kill his own wife and child? Could such a person be trusted? If he said that he didn't drink it, then the black-robed man would be even angrier. If you reminded your wife and child, would you also remind the rest of the Fong family? If his actions of reminding his wife and children alerted the Fong family, then wouldn't this mission fail? You drank it, or did you not drink it? The black-robed man was very concerned about the answer to this question and asked, "Yes, they drank it." Zhou Fan's teeth chattered as he cried, "I was afraid of alerting them, so I didn't remind them. They also drank that bowl of soup. Give me the antidote. Give me the antidote to the soup. I want to save them." Ga, the black-robed man laughed. His laughter was even more ear-piercing and unpleasant than his voice. "People call us beasts. You are the beast." The black-robed man looked at Zhou Fan and said, "In order to save his life, he can even sacrifice his wife and son. If this isn't a slow-acting poison, the poisoned person will die immediately. Or, if I tell you that there is no antidote for this soulless attraction, would you feel a little guilty? Give me the antidote." Zhou Fan was like an enraged mad dog. Death had reduced his fear of the black-robed man. He reached out to the black-robed man and roared, "Give me the antidote. You promised me. As long as I help you complete the mission, you'll give me the antidote." "I did promise you," said the black-robed man. His wide sleeves didn't move at all, but a small red glass bottle flew out from there. Zhou Fan took the vial and asked, "Is this the antidote?" He was a little uncertain. Why did the black-robed man give him the antidote so readily? Or could it be that this was another type of poison that would kill anyone who drank it? "This is the antidote," said the black-robed man. "You can only choose to believe it. Because if you don't drink it, the poison in your body will also kill you." Zhou Fan no longer hesitated. He unscrewed the cap and poured the red potion into his mouth. A strong fishy smell wafted out, causing Zhou Fan to retch in disgust. "Don't vomit," said the black-robed man. "This is raw blood. If you vomit it, you won't be able to cure the poison in your body. The soulless attraction is a slow-acting poison, but the poison in your body, will immediately break your meridians and cause you to bleed to death. Every hair on your body can bleed. You must have never seen such a scene, right? Zhou Fan forcefully swallowed the thing he was about to vomit back. He looked at the black-robed man and said, "Give me the antidote. I want to save my wife and child." "Do you think you still have a chance to save your wife and child?" asked the black-robed man in a deep voice. Zhou Fan staggered back and asked in panic, "What are you doing?" "Of course I'm going to kill you," said the black-robed man. "I promised to give you the antidote, so I'll give you the antidote. However, I didn't say that I wouldn't kill you after giving you the antidote. Stupid animal, you're the only one who knows. How can I let you leave alive?" As soon as he finished speaking, the black-robed man's body disappeared. A gust of wind swept past. Zhou Fan thought he was going to die. His limbs were numb, and his whole body had been frozen into ice. Or was he already dead? This gray world was really like hell. But does hell also snow? When he felt that he could still breathe, when he heard his heart beating fiercely, he realized that he was still alive. He didn't understand what was going on. His mind was still stuck on the scene of the black-robed man rushing towards him. His speed was too fast, like a thick fog wrapping around him. What happened after that? "You're not dead," a familiar man's voice sounded behind him. Zhou Fan turned around and looked at Feng Yan's eyes. His body powerlessly fell to the ground and said, "You're finally here. It's better to come at the right time than to come early." Feng Yan's gaze was fixed on the black-robed man's face, and he said, "Don't you think so?" "You." The black-robed man looked at Feng Yan, then looked at Zhou Fan, who was lying on the ground without the strength to move, and said with a voice full of resentment, "Did you plan to set up an ambush?" Zhou Fan came out to ask for the antidote, and when he was about to kill him, Feng Yan appeared in time to save Zhou Fan. If the appearance of these two people was just a coincidence, the black-robed man wouldn't believe it no matter what. "Don't act like you're angry," Feng Yan said with a sneer. "You sent someone to kill me, so I should be angry. What right do you have to be angry? The reason why your assassination didn't succeed is because your plan was too stupid. Now you can take off your black robe. I'm really curious. What kind of person hates me so much that they want to exterminate my Feng family?" The black-robed man's facial expression was hidden in his hood, and from where Feng Yan stood, he could only see a pitch-black hole. Not even the outline of the face could be seen, which made it very difficult for Feng Yan to distinguish. However, it was also because of this that he suspected that this person was someone he was familiar with. Otherwise, why would he dress up like a medieval wizard to hide his identity? The black-robed man sneered and said, "Since you're so curious, then come and take it off yourself." As the black-robed man spoke, he leaped up again. The wide black robe on his body spread out, and it was as if a black wall had appeared in front of Feng Yan out of thin air. Feng Yan was not afraid of the unknown darkness, and with a tap of his toes, he charged toward the black wall. Before he got close, a powerful qi was released. Feng Yan's body soared into the air like a crane, and his movements were as smooth as flowing water. He punched toward the black-robed man's chest. Pa! The powerful qi hit the black-robed man's chest, and the black-robed man quickly floated backward. Feng Yan's legs kicked off, and with the help of drunken crane rides the wind, his body accelerated in the air. His body shot out like a cannonball, fiercely charging toward the black-robed man. When Feng Yan got close to the black-robed man, he slammed his palm toward the black-robed man's head. The black-robed man's head shrank, and he unexpectedly disappeared from the hood. Without the support of his head, the hood collapsed in an instant. Feng Yan's palm struck empty air, and his body moved forward in a straight line due to inertia. Pa! The black-robed man's wide sleeve swung over, and he began to counterattack. The sleeve carried a powerful qi, and it was like a huge steel palm leaf fan. Before the sleeve could hit a person's body, the strong wind had already swept the person away. Feng Yan did not retreat, but instead advanced, and his body accelerated again. The Tai Chi heart spun, and the Tai Chi realm completely unfolded. In Feng Yan's mind, the swung sleeve turned into a square with 4 black lines. Of course, in Feng Yan's eyes, its speed was already astonishingly slow. Fang Yen stretched out his hand like lightning and grabbed a corner of the sleeve. His legs exerted force, and his body rose into the air again. In the air, he used pushing 1,000 jin with 4 liang. And using his strength as a guide, he levered the huge black-robed man. His body spun in the air, following the path of the Tai Chi heart. With this rotating force as a carrier, Fang Yan's body was able to maintain its momentum in the air and no longer fall. Then, he pulled the black-robed man and spun like a windmill. Every time he spun, he would reduce some of the force. After they spun countless times, the black-robed man's strength had been completely reduced. Fang Yen dragged the black-robed man to the ground. He knew that the black-robed man had become a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. He wanted to tear apart his black robe, take off his black hat, and finally cover him with the white cloth that represented death. He hated the black-robed man to the core. Rip! A crisp sound was heard. The sleeve in Fang Yan's hand could not withstand the pull of gravity and suddenly broke. Fang Yan reacted quickly and punched the black-robed man's head. He was never a picky person. In his opinion, he could first see the black-robed man's true face and then smash his head, or he could first smash his head and then see the black-robed man's true face. Perhaps at that time, he would no longer be able to see clearly. Who cared? Bam! Fang Yan's fist landed solidly on the black robe. Unfortunately, it was only the black robe, and not the black-robed man's body. The black-robed man actually used the black robe as a disguise, and played a clever trick of a cicada shedding its carapace. He slid down from the bottom of the black robe. Earlier, Fang Yen landed on the ground, and then swung his right hand, and a blood-red thread shot towards Zhou Fan, who was lying on the ground. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.